Chapter 1070. Yi Xingqian really couldn't handle the alcohol. After taking a small sip of drunken dream, he walked to the sheep pen in a daze. Fortunately, Li Qingyang pulled him back in time. Otherwise, he would be separated from his bed again. This was very uncomfortable, very painful. However, Pei Aniu, who was in the spirit gathering array, had already forgotten the unhappiness. At this moment, he was immersed in cultivation. Although he had slept for 4 hours, he was still in a state of rapid spiritual energy absorption. The enhancement of drunken dream had no conflict with his spirit meridian and spirit gathering pill. With all these factors combined, the speed of spiritual energy absorption was simply terrifying. In this aspect, even He Wudi, who had a spirit root above divine grade, couldn't compare. Yi Xingqian, who had moved into the Lingyan Pavilion, had advanced 3 grades in a row. His martial arts realm was already the highest among the disciples. If he had the help of drunken dream, he would definitely be victorious all the way. So, he was in a dilemma again. Because the patriarch had said before that the wine that increased spiritual energy absorption was in the process of brewing. In the future, he might be able to drink a small cup every day. Wouldn't he be embarrassed every day in his state of being unable to handle the alcohol? This time, the heartwarming Li Qingyang pulled him back in time. If he wasn't present in the future, he would definitely be embarrassed sleeping in the sheep, chicken, and duck pen. Damn it! The more Night Emperor thought about it, the more conflicted and painful he felt. For dignity, to stick to his bottom line and continue to abstain from drinking to the end, or to take the risk of losing his composure after drinking to quickly improve his cultivation. There were gains and losses, and there were gains and losses. To drink or not to drink, it was a very difficult choice for Yi Xingqian. Sigh. He shook his head and said, let's take it one step at a time. With a professional manager like Yuan Gongzi in charge of the sect, Jun Changshao was also relaxed. Occasionally, he could empty his mind and sit in the pond to fish. He even flipped through the tasteless romance book. Qian. One day, he stopped Lu Qian and said, can I help you wash something? Wash what? I like you. Ka, cold air filled the air, crystal clear. AI. Li Qingyang and Xiao Ziji walked over. The two of them skillfully circulated the fire elemental heavenly reflection seal and began to melt the ice on the sealed patriarch. After the seal was lifted, Jun Changshao hugged his hands and shivered. In his heart, he roared, what a bullshit divine tool for picking up girls. What a bullshit 99% success rate. Just give up, the system advised. The sect of all times returned to its former tranquility. The disciples were diligent in their cultivation, while the upper echelons were busy with their own affairs. The outside world was also very calm. Especially the Demon Emperor's Gate, which had always been in the Spirit Crossing Valley. Firstly, he had been blackmailed twice by Jun Changshao, and the sect master had been arranged for by Jun Changshao. It could be said that his vitality had been greatly damaged. Secondly, all the cultivators who had entered the planar battlefield had returned safely. Without the Demon Emperor's Gate causing trouble, the Starfall continent was naturally peaceful. However, behind the calm, undercurrents were surging. Because on the other side of the formation that Shengwan Xinyao had strengthened in the northern desert state, the experts of the Spiritas were racking their brains to think of a way. They had to break through the shackles within a year, or else they would have to bring their heads to Queen Rose. Jun Changshao did not know. However, in his free time, he had considered whether there were still Spiritas on the Starfall continent. There must be. After all, there were 9 who had harmed the continent in the past. They either have not awakened, or they are hiding in the dark. Jun Changshao said solemnly, we have to increase our intelligence network and search more carefully. In the following period of time, he often went in and out of the Drizzle Hall to discuss intelligence matters with Li Luoqiu. Occasionally, he would say some cheesy words of love, but the result was that he had successfully made her laugh. Until one day, he was so sad that he burned the entire collection of cheesy words of love. Patriarch. Li Luocho said, I just received news that the altar will send someone to reward you next month for your performance in the planar battlefield. They will give you 5 million artificial spirit stones. Only 5 million? Jun Changshao rolled his eyes and said, that's too stingy. At present, not to mention 5 million artificial spirit stones, even 5 million natural spirit stones might not be enough for him. However, since they were giving it to him, he had to accept it. Therefore, at the beginning of the next month, he warmly invited the high priest of the altar to the sect and arranged a good meal for him. He then accepted the 5 million artificial spirit stones without hesitation. This matter caused a huge commotion in the Starfall continent. After all, as the most authoritative department in the non-faction, rewarding the sect of all times in a high-profile manner meant that they had received absolute recognition. For a time, Jun Changshao and his sect's prestige skyrocketed. In the eyes of the world, they already had the qualifications to stand shoulder to shoulder with the top sections. Go Sheng did not care about fame or whatnot. He only cared about his sect having greater strength and moving towards becoming the strongest sect in the Starfall continent. Ding! 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 Under Xiao Ziji's control, the Dragon Tooth series weapons were produced every day. The number of weapons gradually broke through the thousands, and then they were given to the members of the War Cavalry Hall. Shui Rengui and Tao Yuan were also actively training the beast hordes so that they would have the same battle capabilities as humans. The growth of the sect of all times disciples was to increase the sect's strength. The hundreds of thousands of beast hordes were trained in batches to increase their battle capabilities. Of course, Jun Changshao did not have the ambition to conquer the world and unify the 9 states. Letting Shui Rengui and Tao Yuan train them was more for the sake of preparing for a rainy day. They might come in handy in the future. Patriarch. One day, Li Luocho hurriedly walked in. After hesitating for a long time, she still said, Little Mo sent a message. She encountered danger while training in the demonic dragon cave. Patriarch, please send someone to rescue her. Isn't he in seclusion? When did he come out? Jun Changshao was stunned. Li Luocho said apologetically, after the Patriarch went to the East Sea, Xiao Mu came out. I forgot to report to you for a while. How dangerous is it? Little Mo hopes that the Patriarch will send Hall Master Z, or you will go personally. Jun Changshao's expression became serious. If he and Hall Master Li were to go and rescue her, Little Mo must be in great danger. I will go. Jun Changshao did not stay. He hurriedly flew out of the sect of all times and headed toward the demonic dragon cave. He shook his head and said, the Taishan Shengzong is really crazy. He always sends his disciples to all kinds of forbidden areas to seek death. In order to improve their disciples' cultivation faster, sending them to dangerous areas to train was a common practice of the sect. Unlike the sect of all times, the disciples could go through high-level training without leaving their homes. They could even fight their way out of the falling star continent and into the dimensional battlefield. The demonic dragon cave. It was one of the most dangerous forbidden areas in the falling star continent. Boom! 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 At this moment, the sound of fierce battle came from the crisscrossing cave that looked like a spider's nest. The surrounding area trembled violently. The camera zoomed in. Su Xiaoma, who had disguised himself, was fully unleashing his emperor-level cultivation. He was fighting a 9th-stage emperor-level spirit beast. Due to the limitation of space, he was gradually at a disadvantage. Roar! Roar! The spirit beast that looked like a dragon and a snake roared continuously. Scorching energy cannonballs swept over. Boom, boom, boom. Su Xiaoma gathered spiritual energy in his right foot and kicked wildly. Although he dissolved the cannonballs one by one, he was forced to retreat dozens of steps and hit the wall with a bang. Xia Shuiyun, who was lying next to him and was seriously injured, was completely dumbfounded. Why was he so strong? Why was he able to fight a high-level spirit beast that was close to the peak? It was not important anymore. Xia Shuiyun clenched her fists and shouted, "Go! Don't worry about me. Xia Shuyan, remember this. Su Xiaoma walked out from the sunken wall and stood in front of her with his back facing her, giving her a sense of security. He said coldly, a real man will never abandon his woman. Xia Shuyan was stunned. Her pale face blushed a little. Words of love from Jun Changxiao's mouth were very vulgar, but from Su Xiaoma's mouth, they were very manly. Sigh. They were both Gousheng, but why was there such a big difference? Chapter 1071. Su Xiaoma was very depressed. In this kind of terrain that restricted him, he couldn't use his speed at all. It was very difficult to defeat this big guy that looked like a dragon or a snake. He had the True Yang set and various equipment given by the Patriarch in his space ring. However, he had already exposed his real cultivation. If he used these, Xia Shuyan would be even more suspicious. What should I do? What should I do? Su Xiaoma, who had always been calm, began to struggle. He still couldn't understand why the spirit beast hiding in the deepest part of the demonic dragon cave suddenly rushed out. Roar! Roar! At this moment, the big guy opened its mouth and spat out energy shells. Because Xia Shuyan was in the attack area, Su Xiaoma could only choose to fight head-on. He was already limited by the terrain, and now there was a wounded person holding him back. This made him very sullen. Boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom. After a series of dazzling kicks, although all kinds of shells were dissolved, Su Xiaoma retreated again until he was in front of Xia Shuyan. His face was ferocious. Su Jintang. Tears welled up in Xia Shuyan's eyes as she said, "Please leave, I beg you." She knew that with his performance just now, he could escape immediately. If he continued to fight, he would be obliterated sooner or later. This cold girl was finally melted by Su Xiaoma. At this moment, she only hoped that he could leave safely. Su Xiaoma forced himself to calm down. He observed the surroundings with his spiritual thoughts, thinking about how to escape safely without exposing more trump cards. He said seriously, "I won't abandon you." The undercover Taishian Shengzong, he had been acting all this time. His feelings for Xia Shuyan were also the most real. Swish! Swish! The spirit beast wriggled its body and rushed over quickly. Then, it opened its bloody mouth and a strong air wave accompanied by a burst of stinky smell. Patriarch Su Xiaoma clenched his fist and said secretly, "Now that things have come to this, I can't hide anymore." Swish! Swish! The True Yang battle armor covered his body and the True Yang battle boots were worn on his feet. The red cloak fluttered in the air, and the camera slowly moved away to give Su Xiaoma a close-up of his face. He was wearing the True Yang mask. Xia Shuyan widened her eyes. Both the armor and the boots exuded a powerful aura, which made her instantly certain that they were extremely high-level equipment. Taishian Shengzong also had a lot of weapons and equipment, but none of them were of this type. How could he have it? Could it be that old man Jun Tian gave it to him? Roar! At the spur of the moment, the spirit beast had already charged over in a frenzy. Clang! Unsheathing the True Yang sword, Su Xiaoma fused with the True Yang battle boots. Su Xiaoma could be seen dragging an afterimage behind him as he rushed over. His speed was so fast that Xia Shuyan couldn't catch him. Swish sword light appeared out of thin air, tearing through space. Then, blood splattered, and a stench that made people suffocate spread out. Roar! The dragon snake-like spirit beast let out a miserable shriek. Its wide-open mouth had already been ruthlessly slashed open by the sword. Whoosh! Su Xiaoma, who had circled behind the spirit beast, leaped into the air. Holding the hilt of his sword with both hands, he poured spiritual energy into the sword and angrily roared, "Die for me!" Puchi! The True Yang sword ruthlessly pierced the spirit beast's skull, and it immediately began to madly charge around the cave. Su Xiaoma couldn't dodge in time and was instantly slammed against the wall by the spirit beast. His originally injured body was getting worse and worse. Boom! 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 After a while, the spirit beast collapsed to the ground, dead. Wah! Su Xiaoma pulled out his sword and jumped down. Half kneeling on the ground, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Judging from the current situation, he was definitely in a heavily injured state. The problem wasn't big. With the healing pill, he would immediately recover after taking it. But this woman was still here, so he couldn't be too conspicuous. He had to take advantage of the fact that she wasn't paying attention. Just as Su Xiaoma was thinking, Xia Shuiyun rushed over and hugged him, who was covered in wounds. Tears fell like rain as she said, "Why were you so stupid? Why did you save me?" Su Xiaoma was a little confused. He let go of the True Yang sword and tried his best to raise his arms and hug her back. He smiled and said, "Because, you are the woman I care about the most." Clap clap clap. Suddenly, applause came from afar. Su Xiaoma looked up and saw Fang Lingyu and a few inner disciples appear at the entrance of the tunnel. He frowned and said, "Why are you here?" Xia Shuiyun hurriedly let go and kept a distance from him. Her neck and cheeks were already extremely red. After escaping danger, she threw away her reservations and rushed over. But she didn't expect her fellow disciples to appear, so she was definitely embarrassed. "Su Jintang," Fang Lingyu said with a cold face, "I didn't expect you to be so strong that you could kill a spirit beast that was about to reach the peak." Xia Shuiyun quickly calmed down. She turned around and said, "Senior Sister Fang, we should leave quickly, Junior Sister Xia." Fang Lingyu interrupted, "I told you to stay away from this guy. Not only did you not listen, you even did something that crossed the line. You really disappoint me." Xia Shuiyun lowered her head. Swoosh! Su Xiaoma reached out and put his hand on her shoulder. He gently pulled her over and said, "Shuiyun and I have been lovers for a long time. Isn't it normal for us to hug each other?" "Lovers?" Fang Lingyu looked at Xia Shuiyun with a questioning gaze. Xia Shuiyun fell into silence. After a while, she said, "Yes, we are lovers." She knew that Fang Lingyu didn't like Su Jintang, but at this time, if she denied it, she would definitely hurt him. "I'm sorry." Su Xiaoma leaned over and kissed Xia Shuiyun's forehead. He said, "I've hurt you." He was provoking Fang Lingyu. However, Xia Shuiyun's little face became even redder, accompanied by a burning sensation. Then, she leaned on his shoulder like a weak little girl. Since they admitted that they were lovers, she could only accept being bullied by him. Fang Lingyu's eyes were filled with strong killing intent. "Brat!" She walked over step by step and said, "I've said that you're not worthy of Junior Sister Xia." Su Xiaoma stood up with Xia Shuiyun in his arms. He said calmly, "Whether I'm worthy or not, is it up to you? Who do you think you are?" This woman must have witnessed the battle between him and the spirit beast. Since she knew his strength, there was no need to hide it. Su Jintang. The four inner disciples followed and glared at him. "How can you talk to Senior Sister Fang like that?" Su Xiaoma said calmly, "A bunch of bootlickers." "What did you say?" "I dare you to say that again." The anger in their eyes burned even brighter. Their martial king cultivation erupted. It was obvious that they were ready to attack at any time. The scene of Su Xiaoma killing the spirit beast had shocked them. However, they were not afraid at all now. After all, he was seriously injured. As long as Senior Sister Fang gave the order, they would definitely teach him a lesson. "Bootlickers, bootlickers." Su Xiaoma said coldly, "You'll end up with nothing in the end." These words seemed to have ignited a bomb in an instant, causing the four of them to be enraged. "Brat!" Fang Lingyu said with a cold face, "According to the rules of the Taishan Shengzong sect, don't talk to me about sect rules." Su Xiaoma hugged Xia Shuiyun and said proudly, "If you want to fight, I'm always ready." Chapter 1072. Why would Fang Lingyu and the four inner disciples be here? Why would the powerful spirit beasts that originally lived in the depths of the demonic dragon cave appear in the periphery? Su Xiaomo thought for a moment and felt that there must be a connection between the two. He might have been tricked by them. Anyway, his cultivation had been exposed in front of others. Since this woman was very suspicious, and now her eyes were full of killing intent, then there was no need to pretend. Let's lay our cards on the table. This showdown was not to show his identity as a disciple of the sect of all times, but to face the high and mighty Fang Lingyu and the 4 inner disciples who were wagging their tails behind her. Come on. Let's fight to our heart's content. Su Xiaomo was exuding a proud aura at this moment. That was the aura that belonged to the sect of all times. That was an unyielding aura. However, Fang Lingyu sneered and said, although your strength is strong, you are now seriously injured. What qualifications do you have to be arrogant in front of me? Su Xiaomo said proudly, even if I am seriously injured, I can still deal with you trash. Arrogant. Arrogant. The 2 inner disciples couldn't bear it anymore. They gathered spiritual power in their palms and shouted, Junior sister Xia, quickly get out of the way. Senior brother will teach this arrogant guy a lesson. Xia Shuiyun naturally wouldn't leave Su Xiaomo. She wanted to say something to persuade him, so that things wouldn't develop to the point of fighting between fellow disciples. However, just as she was about to speak, she was pushed out and pushed to the back. Swish! Su Xiaomo took a step forward and said with his back to her, stand there and don't move. These 4 words revealed endless love and also had the meaning of command. Xia Shuiyun wanted to say something but stopped. Then, she stood behind obediently. Master once taught me to keep a low profile and not be competitive. Su Xiaomo held the mask with his hand. His eyes gradually became cold and fierce, and said, but if others are too much, there is no need to endure anymore. Swish! Swish! The 2 inner disciples swung their fists over. Without Xia Shuiyun by their side, they had no scruples. Paw! Paw! Su Xiaomo grabbed their fists and said coldly, you are merely martial kings, yet you dare to attack Wu Huang. Who gave you the courage? Swish! Swish! He filled his palms with spiritual energy and lifted the 2 inner disciples, before he threw them away brutally. Boom! Boom! At this moment, the other 2 people walked over and punched Su Xiaomo in the chest with their fists imbued with spirit energy. But soon, they widened their eyes, because Su Xiaomo stood where he was and was as firm as a rock. This guy was obviously seriously injured. Why did he give people the feeling that he could continue fighting? Hoo! Su Xiaomo's body surged with a powerful imperial aura. His wrists, which were clasped in front of his chest, suddenly swung to the left and right. Boom! Boom! The 2 inner sanctum disciples had their faces in close contact with the wall. These inner disciples of the Taishan Shengzong were the geniuses that had been designated to enter the perfect spirit pagoda. They were all at the martial king realm, but they could not withstand a single blow from the injured Su Xiaomo. Damn it! Everyone, let's attack together. The 4 disciples stood up in embarrassment, their eyes flickering with anger. They had already taken advantage of someone's perilous state, so they definitely did not mind fighting with numbers. Swish! 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 Spirit energy burst out, and all kinds of fist marks appeared. Boom! 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 Even though Su Xiaomo was seriously injured, he still used his magnificent footwork to break all kinds of martial arts. But because of his injuries, his expression turned hideous again. The spirit beast struggle before its death had caused him quite a lot of damage. If he continued fighting, his injuries would only worsen. The 4 inner disciples naturally saw this and continued to launch stronger attacks. They even deliberately avoided fighting with their full strength, choosing to use a strategy of attrition to drag it out. Under such attacks, Su Xiaomo's injuries became more and more serious, and his spirit energy was rapidly draining. Boom! Boom! Caught off guard, he was ambushed from the back. Wah! Su Xiaomo spat out a mouthful of blood. The pain from his meridians made his expression extremely hideous. Seeing this, Xia Shuiyan felt a stabbing pain in her heart. She wanted to open her mouth and stop them. She wanted to rush over and protect the man who had saved her from danger time and time again. However, he had also told him to stand still. After a struggle in her heart, Xia Shuiyan chose to continue standing. Boom! Boom! Su Xiaomo was hit again. His body staggered back a few steps, and then he raised his head with difficulty. His eyes were flickering with anger. Fong Lingyu, who had been watching from the side, signaled the four to stop. Like a high and mighty empress, she said, since you have entered the Taishan Shengzong, you must learn to understand the rules. Understand your rules? That's right. Su Xiaomo smiled bitterly and said, you have been suppressed by Lu Qianqian all this time. Only when she was expelled did you manage to stand out. Do you really think of yourself as a proud daughter of heaven? Xia Shuiyan's expression changed greatly. She thought to herself, this is bad. Senior Sister Fong's biggest taboo was that she did not allow others to mention Lu Qianqian in front of her. Sure enough. When Fong Lingyu heard Su Xiaomo's words, the murderous intent in her eyes became even stronger. It was to the point that she did not hide it at all. Trash whose cultivation was abolished by the higher-ups, what qualifications do you have to be compared with me? She said coldly. Her right hand rested on the hilt of the sword at her waist. With a clang, she unsheathed the sword. Trash. Su Xiaomo also had murderous intent. How dare you humiliate senior sister? I will make you suffer the consequences today. Swish. Go Sheng did not hesitate to take out a healing pill from the space ring and swallowed it. Tisk, seeing this, an inner disciple said disdainfully, with your current injuries, it's useless to eat elixirs. How dare you mention that woman's name in front of senior sister Fong? You must be tired of living. The other three disciples had a mocking smile on their faces because they all knew that senior sister would not let this guy off easily. Swish! Fong Lingyu suddenly waved her sword. Her murderous intent was unprecedentedly strong. The smiles on the inner disciples' faces froze. They were shocked. Senior sister is going to take his life. She is serious. Xia Shuiyan also realized that Fong Lingyu had murderous intent. In a panic, she tried to dissuade her. Senior sister Fong, we are from the same sect. Please don't kill each other. Otherwise, clink. At this moment, Su Xiaomo had already appeared in the area where the long sword was swung. His two fingers gently clamped the blade of the sword, and his strong emperor-level aura burst out. He said, don't come out and embarrass yourself with this little strength. Fong Lingyu was stunned. You are not injured. Crack. Su Xiaomo poured spiritual energy into his two fingers, and the long sword suddenly shattered. The moment the tip of the sword fell off, he gently raised his left hand. With a whoosh, it flew over and slashed across the left side of Fong Lingyu's face at an extremely fast speed. Her pupils suddenly shrank. Clink. The broken sword tip sank deep into the wall in the distance. Slender sword marks gradually appeared on Fong Lingyu's delicate face. Blood seeped out, and her eyes were filled with shock. Swish! Su Xiaomo took a step forward and slashed the sword in the opposite direction with his two fingers. Fong Lingyu didn't have time to resist at all. She felt a faint pain on her left face, and another slender sword mark appeared. The whole process happened extremely fast. Xia Shuiyan and the four inner disciples didn't see the movement clearly at all. They saw two sword marks appear on the left side of senior sister Fong's face out of nowhere. Swish! The True Yang's sword that was stabbed into the ground in the distance flew over. Su Xiaomo grabbed it and pressed the sharp blade against Fong Lingyu's neck. He took 2 steps forward and forced her to the edge of the wall. He tilted his head and leaned over until he stopped next to her ear. Then he lowered his voice and said, Killing you is as easy as killing an ant for me. Fong Lingyu was extremely embarrassed and angry. However, because she was bound by the sword, she could only stick to the wall and didn't dare to move at all. Senior Sister Fong. The 4 inner disciples exclaimed in shock. Huff! Huff! At this moment, Wu Huang's pressure burst out and smashed on them like iron hammers. They immediately retreated and covered their chests while vomiting blood. Su Xiaoma turned his head and said coldly, "You are no exception." Chapter 1073. After taking the healing pill, Su Xiaoma's injuries and spiritual energy had completely recovered. Therefore, whether it was Fong Lingyu or the 4 inner disciples, they were nothing but trash in front of him. He could easily crush them in the palm of his hand. Xia Shuiyun, who was standing behind him, was dumbfounded. Wasn't he seriously injured? Why did he not seem to be injured? Could it be related to the pill he swallowed? The 4 inner disciples who were lying on the ground in pain were also puzzled. After all, they were exhausted just now, but now they seemed to be rejuvenated. This was unbelievable. Fong Lingyu did not have time to think about this problem. She was thinking about how to get out of this predicament. Su Jintang. She gritted her teeth and said, "You hurt a fellow disciple. If the elders know about this, you will be severely punished." Su Xiaoma raised his sword and pressed the back of the sword against the woman's chin. He smiled coldly and said, "You tried to kill me, but you are not afraid of being severely punished. Now that you are subdued, you are using the elders to pressure me. How ridiculous." Fong Lingyu, bang! Bang! Su Xiaoma pinched her wrist and sealed her cultivation. Then he put away his sword and walked to the other 4 inner disciples, sealing their cultivation in the same way. Plop! Plop! Fong Lingyu and the others collapsed on the ground weakly. Su Xiaoma walked to Xia Shuiyun and said, "We can't stay here for long. Let's get out of here quickly." There was more than one spirit beast that looked like a dragon or a snake in the demon dragon cave. If a few more appeared, they would not be able to escape. What about them? They are on their own. Su Xiaoma said coldly. Not to mention whether they had deliberately lured the spirit beasts out, the fact that he was just watching the whole fight was enough to kill them. He would not kill the disciples of the Taishan Shengzong with his own hands, but he could use this method to kill them. No! Xia Shuiyun said, "They will die here." Her heart was on Su Xiaoma's side, but Fong Lingyu and the others were from the same sect after all, so it was difficult for her to throw them into danger. Su Xiaoma shook his head and said, "Do you think their appearance is a coincidence? Do you think it's a coincidence that the spirit beasts rushed out from the depths?" Xia Shuiyun said in disbelief, "The spiritual beasts were lured here by Senior Sister Fong and the others?" Su Xiaoma glanced at Fong Lingyu, who was paralyzed on the ground, and said indifferently, "This woman has a venomous heart. I can tell from her killing intent when she attacked earlier, so it's not surprising that she would do something like this." Xia Shuiyun fell silent. Senior Sister Fong's killing intent was too strong. If it wasn't for Su Jintang's sudden recovery, he might have already been killed by her. "Those who want to kill me must be prepared to be killed." Su Xiaoma said indifferently, "Leave them in the demonic dragon cave today. Whether or not they can leave alive will depend on their luck." Xia Shuiyun said, "If the Council of Elders finds out, it will be difficult for you to have a foothold." "It's okay." Su Xiaoma turned around, grabbed her hand, and said gently, "As long as I have you, I have the whole world." Xia Shuiyun lowered her head shyly and said softly, "Smooth talker." Swoosh! At this moment, a streak of light flew over. An old woman stood at the entrance to the outside. Judging from her clothes, she was obviously a high-ranking member of the Taishan Shengzong. Xia Shuiyun said in surprise, "Elder Chu." Su Xiaoma furrowed her brows. He had never seen this old woman before, but he had heard that Fong Lingyu's master's surname was Chu, and her cultivation had reached the level of Wusheng. Her strength was one of the best in the Taishan Shengzong. Moss. Master, the weak Fang Lingyu spoke with difficulty and looked at Su Xiaoma with resentment. Brat! Let's see how arrogant you can be. When a sword was on her neck, she used a special method to inform her master. As a talented disciple of the Taishan Xingzong, it would be unrealistic if she didn't have some life-saving means. Elder Chu glanced at Fang Lingyu and saw two eye-catching sword scars on the left side of her face. She said in a low voice, "Who hurt my disciple?" Whoosh whoosh. Wu Sheng's aura burst out and filled the entire cave. Moss. Master. Fang Lingyu raised her hand with difficulty and pointed at Su Xiaoma. She said, It's him. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Elder Chu looked over and saw Wu Sheng's aura roaring out. Su Xiaoma hurriedly pushed Xia Shuiyan away and faced the aura alone. He felt as if he was carrying a heavy mountain on his back, and his face became ferocious. He had just entered Wu Huang, and it was impossible for him to face a half-saint, let alone fight against Wu Sheng. Master. Fang Lingyu said, "This guy even sealed my meridians. He planned to leave me in the demonic dragon cave to fend for myself. If I didn't inform you, I'm afraid I would have died here." It was a classic case of adding fuel to the fire. As expected. Elder Chu was furious, and Wu Sheng's aura became even more intense. Ah! Su Xiaoma screamed in pain. At this moment, he was very regretful. He regretted not caring about Xia Shuiyan's presence and directly killing Fang Lingyu with a sword. Elder Chu. Xia Shuiyan panicked and said hurriedly, "There's a misunderstanding, please listen to my explanation." Elder Chu said coldly, "The matter is very clear, and there's no need to explain. As a disciple of the Taishan Xingzong, this guy hurt a fellow disciple and even had the intention to kill. Today, as an elder, I will destroy his cultivation. Bring him back to the faction and punish him." Fang Lingyu was her beloved disciple and also a disciple that the Taishan Xingzong had focused on. Now that she was almost killed by a fellow disciple, this was unforgivable and must be severely punished. Old hag. Su Xiaoma endured the pain and said, If you dare to hurt me, my master will not let you off easily. He will not let the Taishan Xingzong off easily." At this moment, even if he was in an irreversible crisis, his unyielding backbone did not bend at all. Old man Jun Tian. Elder Chu had obviously heard about Su Xiaoma and sneered. Although he's a sword martial half-saint, he doesn't have the guts to cause trouble in the Taishan Xingzong. No. Correction, it's the sword martial saints. Suddenly, a voice came from behind. Elder Chu's expression changed and hurriedly looked back, only to find that an otherworldly old man had appeared at the entrance of the cave. Whoosh! Whoosh! The sword martial saint's aura exploded, as if they had turned into two roaring beasts, violently tearing the aura she released. Thump! 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 Elder Chu immediately took a few steps back after the aura was broken. Her expression changed again and again as she exclaimed, "Wu Sheng! Sword Saint! Whoosh!" Su Xiaoma was released from the oppressive aura and said happily, "Master." He secretly rejoiced in his heart. Fortunately, he was worried that he would alert more people when he was attacked by the spirit beasts just now, so he used the sound transmission technique to inform the sect for help. Idiot! Su Xiaoma looked at the dazed Fang Lingyu and sneered. He thought to himself, only you have the ability to contact Master. Can I only sit and wait for death? Old woman. Jun Changshao, who had transformed into old man Jun Tian, said indifferently, "You dare to bully my disciple. Taishan Xingzong must give a satisfactory explanation. Otherwise, don't blame me for being ruthless." Elder Chu's forehead gradually oozed with sweat. The sword martial saint's aura was still being released without restraint, making her feel even more pressured. "It's a misunderstanding." She hurriedly said, "This is a misunderstanding." Elder Chu had just entered Wusheng. In front of Jun Changshao, who was a second-grade sword martial saint, she was a little sister. Following her heart was the best choice. "Master!" Su Xiaomao pointed at Fang Lingyu and said angrily, "This woman purposely lured out the spirit beasts from the depths of the demonic dragon lair and tried to kill someone with a borrowed knife. Please seek justice for your disciple." "Oh right. She's called Fang Lingyu." This last addition could be said to be perfect. Jun Changxiao's face gradually became serious, and then he raised his hand. Whoosh! A vast amount of spirit energy exploded and turned into an invisible hand, directly enveloping Fang Lingyu and slamming her against the wall. Boom! So you are Fang Lingyu. Boom! 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 So you are Fang Lingyu who has a conflict with my eldest disciple. Su Xiaomao was dumbfounded. The patriarch seemed to have forgotten that he was now old man Jun Tian. Chapter 1074. Why was Su Xiaomao undercover in Taishan Xingzong? Wasn't he in charge of investigating Lu Qianqian and Fang Lingyu? Now that Jun Changxiao had come to help, he happened to meet the main character. Thinking of the conflict and enmity between him and his eldest disciple, he could no longer suppress his anger. I have to beat her up. Right now, there was no time to delay. Therefore, Gosheng directly condensed his spiritual energy and grabbed Fang Lingyu, slamming her into the mountain again and again. He even forgot that his current identity was Elder Jun Tian. So what if he forgot? So what if he was exposed? Not only did he bully my eldest disciple, he even wanted to use his spirit beast to kill my third disciple. Even if I have to lay my cards on the table with Taishan Xingzong today, I will torture this woman until she can't take care of herself. It was normal for Jun Changxiao to do something irrational when he was angry. Boom! 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 After the crazy impact, Fang Lingyu passed out on the spot. Referring to the 9 Poisons Temple Palace Lord of the past, Gosheng would not show any mercy when dealing with women, especially beautiful women. Su Xiaomao was completely speechless. The patriarch was venting his anger without holding back. His undercover career was probably over. Forget it, forget it. He clearly had the strength to crush the inner disciples of the Taishan Xingzong, but he lived like a grandson every day. I've had enough. Plop! Fang Lingyu fell to the ground like a pile of mud. Throughout the entire process of being abused, his master, Elder Chu, could only watch helplessly. In the end, he truly could not hold back and only let out some vicious words, "Old man Jun Tian, don't go overboard." Shwa! Jun Changxiao appeared in front of her and said coldly, "I heard that you wanted to cripple my disciple's cultivation." Not good. Elder Chu's expression changed drastically. Boom! The fist that was condensed with the power of the sword martial arts directly sent her flying and smashed into the wall. Buzz buzz buzz! The entire demonic dragon lair trembled violently under the powerful force. The dragon-like and insect-like spirit beasts that were rushing over from the various tunnels felt the terrifying aftershocks sweeping over them, and were so frightened that they all fled into the depths of the tunnel. Su Xiaomao was right. There were indeed more powerful spirit beasts in the cave. But what he didn't expect was that the patriarch didn't come to help them. Instead, they came to challenge the Taishan Xingzong. Old witch! Jun Changxiao withdrew his fist and said coldly, "If my disciple's cultivation base is crippled, Taishan Xingzong can be removed from Jianghu." This sentence was extremely domineering. It also vividly displayed the protective nature of a sect master. Elder Chu endured his injuries and leaned against the wall. He was extremely puzzled. Wasn't this old man Jun Tian a rogue cultivator? Why not address him as disciple instead of disciple? Was the first disciple he mentioned Su Jintang? Xia Shuiyan's almond-shaped eyes were already wide open. She did not expect Gosheng's master to be so strong. It was simply too easy for him to defeat Wu Sheng like Elder Chu. Shaomo Jun Changxiao said, "I'll bring you to Taishan Xingzong to seek justice." Su Xiaomao's expression instantly became interesting. "Patriarch, you called out my name. Are you really going to lay your cards on the table and forcefully end my undercover career? It doesn't matter if I'm undercover or not. But Xia Shuiyun is still here. How am I going to explain it to her? We've just confirmed our relationship as lovers. If we expose our identities before we even take a step forward, won't we immediately break up? Actually, every night, Su Xiaoma would think about it. He was an undercover and would reveal his identity sooner or later. When that time came, how would he face Xia Shuiyun? Bring her away. Bring her to the sect of all times. Su Xiaoma firmly believed that the patriarch would not refuse. But, would Xia Shuiyun agree? This was a problem. So when necessary, he could play tricks. The plan was good. But it could not compare to the changes. The patriarch came to help this time with the intention of laying all her cards on the table. There was no time to set up any tricks. Xiaomo? Xia Shuiyun looked over with a puzzled expression. Su Xiaoma lowered his head and roared in his heart, "Patriarch, I can't continue this act." Although the Purple King and the others did not cooperate, they could still force the act to continue. Once the patriarch started this act, there was no way to resist. Xiao Mu. Jun Changshao said telepathically, "There's no need to hide. Tell her your true identity." Su Xiaoma's expression stiffened. Just now, he had only speculated that the patriarch was going to lay all her cards on the table. Now, it was true. "Patriarch, Su Xiaoma hesitated. He was afraid that if he revealed his true identity, their relationship would turn from intimate to hostile. Jun Changshao said, "This girl should be Xia Shuiyun. Since the two of you like each other, you should treat this relationship with your true identity and not a fake one that doesn't exist." Su Xiaoma's face was full of astonishment. For the patriarch to say such a thing, could it be that she had consulted Elder Wei? No. Elder Wei could teach anyone, but he couldn't teach him. "I understand." Su Xiaoma clenched his fists and looked up at the woman who had been staring at him all this time. "I'm sorry, some words were easy to say. But they were stuck in his throat and could not be spoken." Xia Shuiyun seemed to have a premonition. Her voice trembled as she said, "What are you trying to say?" Swoosh! Su Xiaoma could not speak. She could only try her best to raise her hand and pull off her sickly face, revealing a chiseled face. The familiar face suddenly became strange. Xia Shuiyun was dumbstruck. Then, she covered her mouth and tears flowed out of her eyes. "You are not Su Jintang. I am not Su Jintang. I am also not Gosheng Su." Seeing the girl crying in front of him, Su Xiaoma felt a sharp pain in his heart. He said with difficulty, "I am a disciple of the Sect of all times. I am Su Xiaoma." At that moment, Xia Shuiyun finally understood why this unfamiliar face had a trace of familiarity. It turned out that he was a disciple of the Sect of all times who participated in the Dragon-Tiger battle for supremacy. Elder Chu angrily rebuked, "So you are a spy." Su Xiaoma ignored this old witch and walked in front of Xia Shuiyun. "I lied to everyone in Taishan Xingzong, but I did not lie to you. Because my heart slap." A crisp slap sounded in the cave. Xia Shuiyun gritted her teeth. Her eyes were filled with tears and hatred. This iceberg woman was really melted. She even did not hesitate to call him lover in front of senior sister Fang. The one who melted her was Su Jintang, Su Gosheng, not Su Xiaoma of the Sect of all times. When the other party revealed his true face, it was also a merciless declaration that whether it was Su Jintang or Gosheng, they no longer existed. The dream was shattered. Everything was gone. The pain in Xia Shuiyun's heart was 100 times, 1,000 times more intense than Su Xiaoma's. "I am sorry. I am sorry." Su Xiaoma tried his best to turn his face around. There was a bright red palm print on his face. He had taken advantage of Xia Shuiyun before. However, it was only his face that hurt. This time, it was his heart, flesh, and entire body that hurt. Su Xiaoma had imagined the scene of him confessing his identity, but he did not think that when the day came, he would be in so much pain that he wished he was dead. Xia Shuiyun glared at him angrily. Her tears fell like rain. Liar! Big liar! Su Xiaoma's heart hurt even more. He wanted to raise his hand and hug this sad girl, but strong self-blame filled his mind. In the end, he did not have the courage to do so. Sigh. Jun Changshao shook his head helplessly. If I knew that you would fall for me, I would not have asked you to be a spy. Chapter 1075. Su Xiaoma and Xia Shuiyun should not have come to this step. If the former was given some time, he would have used many methods to confess his identity and let the latter accept her new identity. However, Jun Changshao came, and the situation suddenly became melodramatic. I say, dog leftovers. You can rely on your own strength to be single. Why do you have to harm your disciple to be single with you? Xia Shuiyun. At this moment, Su Xiaoma raised the true Yang sword and handed it to her. He said resolutely, I am sincere to you. If you don't believe me, you can dig it out and see for yourself. Jun Changshao's eyes widened. My disciple, you're playing a little too big. Shua! Xia Shuyi took the true Yang sword and raised it to stab at his chest, stopping abruptly when the tip of the sword touched his clothes. She hated herself. Why couldn't she do it? Puchi! Su Xiaoma took a step forward. His chest was pierced by the tip of the sword. Blood soaked his clothes. Xia Shuiyun's face turned pale. She hurriedly pulled back the sword. Su Xiaoma grabbed the sword and said, there was once a sincere love placed in front of me, but I did not cherish it. When I lost it, it was too late for regrets. The most painful thing in the world is this. If the heavens could give me another chance, I would tell this girl that I love her. Drip, drip. The sharp blade cut his palm. Blood dripped down. Su Xiaoma continued to walk forward. The tip of the sword penetrated deeper into his body. He said in pain, if I had to put a time limit on this love, I hope it would be 10,000 years. Expression. Words. It was just right. Jun Changshao heaved a sigh of relief and muttered to himself, fortunately, he said it all. Elder Wei could not teach such words of love. Only he could. The effect was ideal. When Xia Shuiyun heard this classic line from the journey to the west, she was stunned on the spot. The past experience of going out with him appeared in front of her eyes. She could not stop her tears. In the end, she weakly let go of the sword and squatted down. She used her arm as a pillow and cried. Taishian Shengzong. The patriarch and elders gathered in front of the main hall. The disciples on the martial arts field were fully armed with their weapons. It was as if they were facing a great enemy. At the mountain gate, the unconscious Fang and 4 inner sect disciples were suspended in the air by spiritual energy. The most miserable one was Elder Chu. She seemed to have been tied up and hung from the main beam of the mountain gate, swinging back and forth like a swing. The Patriarch and the Patriarch's eyes. As one of the top sects that ruled the pugilistic world, their disciples and higher-ups were actually tied up and hung in front of their mountain gate. This had never happened before, and it was a great humiliation. Old man. The Taishian Shengzong Patriarch said angrily, what is the meaning of this? Jun Changshao, who looked like an immortal, stood at the entrance with his hands clasped behind his back. Your noble sect's disciples tried to harm my disciple, and your noble sect's elders tried to cripple my disciple's cultivation. I've come to seek justice. Seek justice? You're obviously here to cause trouble, aren't you? If not for the aura of the sword and martial saints, the Taishian Shengzong's patriarch would have already attacked. Of course. Jun Changshao said, I have one more thing that I hope Patriarch Xia will agree to. Elder Xia, who was standing in front of the main hall, was at a loss. My third disciple and your granddaughter are in love with each other, so this king. Speaking up to here, Jun Changshao took off the disguise on his face and returned to his original appearance. He smiled and said, I have come to propose marriage. Jun Changshao. The expressions of the Taishan Shengzong's patriarch changed drastically. Especially the first batch of patriarchs who entered the dimensional battlefield. Their eyes widened. They didn't expect this so-called old man Jun Tian to be the Sect of all time's patriarch. Disciple? Third disciple? Motherfucker. Su Jintang can't be a spy, right? Everyone. Jun Changshao cupped his hands and said, "Thank you for taking care of my disciple during this time." These words were too fucking despicable. Although the Taishan Shengzong's patriarch's cultivation wasn't weak, they almost spat out blood on the spot. Patriarch Xia. Jun Changshao said, "I'm revealing my identity to tell you and the Taishan Shengzong that my disciple is qualified to be with any woman in this world." Just now, he had almost broken up Su Xiama and Xia Shuiyan. In order to make up for his mistake, he decided to put aside their grudges to make this pair of affectionate Mandarin ducks. The Taishan Shengzong didn't object to fellow disciples falling in love, and the Sect of all times didn't object to their disciples having the right to love. If both parties were in love, it didn't matter even if they were on opposite sides. Tolerance and openness. This was the principle that Jun Changshao had always adhered to and insisted on. However, this method of tying up an elder and an inner sect disciple to propose marriage, wasn't it pushing Su Xiama to the ranks of bachelors? Of course. Jun Changshao said, "Patriarch Xia has the right to refuse, but as a consequence, I'll sit down and settle the score with the Taishan Shengzong." A threat. A blatant threat. Patriarch Xia's expression turned ugly. The patriarch of the Sect of all times was very powerful, and the patriarch and the higher-ups were obviously very wary of him. Moreover, the entire Starfall continent was indebted to him because of the planar battlefield. What choice should he make? If the Sect of all times and your sect's disciples are on good terms, they'll be considered relatives by marriage, and past grudges will be written off, Jun Changshao said again. He was really trying to matchmake Su Xiama and Xia Shuiyan, although his method was a little extreme. A strange look flashed across the Taishan Shengzong patriarch's eyes when he heard this. To be honest, he was very unwilling to become enemies with Jun Changshao. After all, he had heard from the returning elders that Jun Changshao's strength was so terrifying that all the major existential planes trembled in fear upon hearing his name. If Xia Shuiyan married his disciple, the relationship between the two sects would become closer, and it would be a great benefit to the Taishan Shengzong. Patriarch Xia. The third elder said in a low voice, "For the sake of the sect, you must think carefully." He was giving him advice, reminding him. Jun Patriarch. After Patriarch Xia thought about it, he cupped his hands and said, "Marriage is not child's play. This marriage has to be decided by Shuiyan herself." He didn't say it outright, but instead gave the choice to his granddaughter. After all, this was related to her lifelong happiness, and he wouldn't blindly make a choice because of fear and threats. "Miss Xia." Jun Changshao said, "Do you agree?" Everyone looked over and saw Xia Shuiyan walking up the stairs in front of the mountain gate with red eyes, as if she had lost her soul. Su Xiama followed behind her, wanting to say something but hesitating. Jun Patriarch. Xia Shuiyan stopped in front of the mountain gate, looked up at him, and said, "If I don't agree, will you make things difficult for Taishan Shengzong?" "Yes." Jun Changshao said decisively. "Why?" "Because Lu Qianshan is my eldest disciple." Xia Shuiyan smiled bitterly, and said, "So it's because senior sister Lu's cultivation was destroyed and she was expelled, that's why you sent her here as a spy." "Her cultivation was destroyed?" Jun Changshao's eyes gradually turned cold, and then he looked at Su Xiama, and said in a low voice, "Is there such a thing?" Su Xiama was silent. He had been hiding the fact that senior sister's cultivation was destroyed from the patriarch, afraid that he would explode on the spot, but Xia Shuiyan accidentally said it out loud. "It's over, it's over. Taishan Shengzong is in big trouble this time." Chapter 1076. When Su Xiama was undercover, he would report everything to Li Luoqiu. Only when he learned that Lu Qianshan's cultivation had been destroyed, he kept it a secret. When senior sister went to Lu province in the northeast to cultivate, she was bullied by the extreme coldness palace. The patriarch directly led people to kill her and almost destroyed her sect. This time, it was more serious than last time. If the patriarch knew, the consequences would be even more unimaginable. At that time, Su Xiaoma already had true feelings for Xia Shuiyun, so after thinking about it, he decided to temporarily hide this matter and find an opportunity to talk about it in the future. But he didn't expect this at all. Xia Shuiyun would easily blurt out this matter. Speak. Jun Changxiao's expression was very serious. Su Xiaoma knew that he couldn't hide it anymore, so he could only confess. Senior sister entered the ice spring to cultivate without permission. Not only was she expelled from the sect, but her cultivation was also destroyed. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. As soon as he finished speaking, monstrous murderous intent erupted. Su Xiaoma's hair was blown into a mess, and he howled in his heart, "There is no future for me and Shuiyun." With the patriarch's character, he definitely wouldn't let it go. The conflict between him and the Taishan Xingzong would only deepen, and even develop to an irreversible point. Love. She's leaving me gradually in front of the main hall. The Taishan Xingzong patriarch and the higher-ups felt the undisguised strong murderous intent, and their expressions suddenly changed. Jun Changxiao, who was standing on top of the mountain gate, raised his head. His eyes gradually turned red as he said, "Expelling my eldest disciple, this king can still tolerate it. But to cripple her cultivation, this king cannot tolerate it." The Taishan Xingzong had its own rules, and he expressed that he understood, and was willing to give up the previous grudges for Su Xiaoma. But to have her cultivation destroyed, that was too much. She was just a woman. In this dangerous world, destroying her cultivation and expelling her was the same as asking her to die, wasn't it? Or could it be that she had committed an unforgivable crime and had to experience something crueler than death? At that moment, Jun Changxiao seemed to have the ability to go back in time. He was in the snow, watching the haggard and weak Lu Qianqian walk down the Taishan Xingzong step by step. Her back was so helpless and desolate. Ah! He let out a furious roar, and the power of his sword erupted. Boom boom boom. The mountain gate of Taishan Xingzong was unable to withstand the violent force and collapsed on the spot. Fong Lingyu, Elder Chu, and the others were all sent flying. Su Xiaoma seemed to have realized that something was going to happen. He carried Xia Shuiyun and ran away quickly. When he landed in the distance, he frowned and said, "The patriarch has gone mad. The patriarch has gone berserk. Hoo!" Killing intent howled, sweeping through the surroundings. In front of the main hall, the Taishan Xingzong and the senior leaders witnessed the ruthless destruction of the mountain gate with thousands of years of history. At that moment, they couldn't be angry because they were dominated by fear. Jun Changxiao's aura of the sword and martial sages had already made them very afraid. Now, he suddenly went berserk like a demon from hell. Swoosh! Jun Changxiao flew over. Tearing down the mountain gate was just the beginning. He wanted to tear down the main hall and crush the plaque engraved with the words Taishan Xingzong into powder to vent his anger and seek justice for Lu Qianqian. Now, Gou Sheng wasn't proposing marriage. He wanted to tear down the high ground, the crystal, the front teeth, and the base. Stop him! The Taishan Xingzong shouted. Although he was afraid of Jun Changxiao, he had to protect the main hall at all costs. After all, it was the foundation of the sect. Swoosh! Swoosh! In an instant, dozens of elders flew out together. Wu Huang, half-step sage, and Wu Sheng's cultivation fully erupted, gathering a monstrous aura and pressing down on the crazy Jun Changxiao. The top forces of the top sects attacked one person together. This scene was simply too spectacular. If the world were to watch this battle, they would definitely remember it forever. Get lost! Jun Changxiao shouted angrily. Hu, the sacred flame physique and the five elements physique fully erupted. The scorching and violent flames burned crazily and then turned into flaming fists. Even if there was a huge obstacle ahead, it couldn't suppress his desire to avenge Lu Chanshan. He didn't even care if he had to become the enemy of the whole world. The ultimate protector of his disciple, Sexy. Boom, boom, boom. The blazing fists blasted on all kinds of energy and broke them all with an incomparably domineering momentum. Dozens of Taishan Shengzong's senior leaders staggered and fell to the ground. Their eyes were filled with horror. So many of us attacked together, but this guy broke it so easily. His strength is too terrifying. The few Taishan Shengzong elders who had been to the dimensional battlefield weren't surprised at all. After all, they had seen the scene of Jun Changshao fighting with the sky battlefield's ghost with their own eyes. Jun Patriarch. Someone shouted, "There's a misunderstanding. Please talk calmly." Ho ho ho. Jun Changshao, who was enveloped in flames, seemed to have turned into a flaming beast that walked out of lava. He said in a cold voice, "Wait until I tear down your sect's main hall first." Swoosh, the flames dragged him at an extremely fast speed. Under the dual pressure of the sword and martial arts and the fire domain, the entire Taishan Shengzong seemed to have turned red, as if it was the end of the world. "Kid, how dare you!" Suddenly, an old voice came from the inner courtyard. A blue light flew over quickly and formed a strange pattern, enveloping the main hall and the surrounding disciples and senior leaders to prevent them from being eroded by the flames. "Grand Elder!" The Taishan Shengzong Patriarch said happily. A white-haired old man in a blue robe floated outside the main hall, his turbid eyes flickering with anger. Lan Jingting. The Taishan Shengzong Grand Elder. His realm was Wusheng's consummate. In order to pursue a higher realm, he didn't care about worldly affairs and secluded himself in the back mountain all year round. If Jun Changshao didn't want to break the Taishan Shengzong's main hall, he definitely wouldn't have come out of seclusion. This is troublesome. Su Xiaomo realized that the situation wasn't good. He hurriedly used telepathy to contact the nearest member of the Drizzle Hall. Sect of all times. Li Luoqiu, who was busy, got the news from a member. She hurriedly got up and sent a telepathic message to Jiang Ye and the others. The Patriarch and the Taishan Shengzong have started fighting. Let's support them quickly. This news instantly exploded in the sect. The upper echelons of the sect of all times flew up and rushed over as fast as they could. That's a top sect. Their overall strength is very strong. Shui Rengui decisively gave the battle order. Inform the wolf cavalry, leopard cavalry, tiger cavalry, and lion cavalry to rush to the Taishan Shengzong as fast as possible. Roar! Roar! Boom! 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 For a moment, the roars of the Iron Bone Mountain shook the sky and the earth shook violently. What's going on? The residents of the Iron Bone town were all stunned. Xie Guanquan, who was in Xingyang City, also felt the slight tremors on the ground. His mouth twitched. Is it another beast tide? That's right. It was indeed a beast tide. The members of the Spirit Beast Hall, led by Elder Nyo, controlled hundreds of thousands of ferocious beasts and followed the members of the War Cavalry Hall out of the Iron Bone Mountain. Grand Priest. Inside the altar, an old man said in a panic, "There's another beast tide riot in southwest Yangzhou." Yuan Gongzi, who was on the way to the Taishan Shengzong, was already in a state of shock. He already felt how strong the sect of all times was when he was persuaded earlier. Today, because of the Drizzle Hall's Hall Master's words, the entire sect's strength was mobilized. The formation was simply too terrifying. When the Patriarch was fighting, the whole family was mobilized. The cohesiveness of a sect was undoubtedly displayed. In contrast, when he was in charge of the Demon Emperor's Gate, everything had to be approved by the elders before it could be carried out. He was even repeatedly denied. This is a sect. Yuan Gongzi lamented in his heart. This is a king's teammate. Chapter 1077. Inside the altar. The high priest stood in front of the earthen spirit instrument and looked at the beast tide area. Why did the beast tide appear in southwest Yangzhou again? To be exact, An elder said solemnly, "It's still in Qingyang County." Qingyang County? The high priest heaved a sigh of relief. With the Sect of All Times and June Patriarch around, it shouldn't be a big problem. The beast tide that appeared previously also happened in Qingyang County. Afterward, the whole world was in chaos. Many powerful cultivators rushed over as quickly as possible, but when they arrived at the scene, the beast tide was defeated. If it was anywhere else, the high priest would be very nervous. Only the beast tide appeared in Qingyang County. That was because Jun Changshao was not an ordinary person. He would definitely be able to deal with it easily. Something's not right. Someone exclaimed, "The beast tide is moving. It's heading to other counties." The high priest hurriedly looked at the earthen spirit instrument. Indeed, the beast tide warning points were moving rapidly and had left southwest Yangzhou. Where were they going? High priest. A cultivator hurried in and said, "I just received news that the Sect of All Times Patriarch is causing trouble in Taishan Zone. As one of the top sects in the continent, the relevant departments would pay close attention to it. Therefore, news would be sent immediately if there was any movement." The high priest's expression changed slightly. He subconsciously looked at the earthen spirit instrument and observed the direction of the warning points. Suddenly, he thought of something and exclaimed, "This route. Don't tell me the beast tide is attacking Taishan Zone." High priest. Another cultivator reported, "According to the information from southwest Yangzhou, the Sect of All Times disciples are riding on a large number of ferocious beasts and are traveling at an extremely fast speed." There were too many things that the high priest couldn't understand. He hugged his head and broke down. What's going on? Boom! 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 Outside Taishan Shenzong, Jun Changshao and Lan Jingting were dragging streaks of light as they clashed wildly in the sky. The powerful aftershocks compressed the space, causing large pieces of it to shatter. The falling star continent's spatial barrier was not as strong as the planar battlefield. A battle of this level would be catastrophic. The Taishan Shenzong Patriarch and the upper echelons of the Taishan Shenzong were dumbfounded and scared out of their wits. Grand Elder. The sect's strongest fighting force. Jun Changshao had fought with him for so long, yet he was not at a disadvantage at all. Taishan Shenzong had long heard of this person and the Sect of All Times. However, even though the other party had won the Dragon Tiger battle for hegemony, they didn't take it to heart. At most, they were just a new sect with potential. However, in the planar battlefield, he had relied on his own strength to create a stronghold on the scale of a city. He had slaughtered so many powerhouses in the planar battlefield that they trembled in fear upon hearing his name. And now, he was fighting evenly with the Grand Elder. This feeling was as if he had suddenly become so strong that it was unreal. Did I say something wrong? Nestled in Su Xiaoma's arms, Xia Shuiyun had a pained expression as she witnessed the earth-shaking battle. In the situation just now, if she had agreed to this marriage, the matter would have been resolved peacefully. However, after mentioning Lu Qianqian, it suddenly evolved to a point where it could not be mediated. Su Xiaoma shook his head and said, "Eldest senior sister is the first disciple to join the sect. She is very important to the patriarch. Even if she was expelled and had her cultivation crippled before she joined the sect, he would not let it go just like that." Eldest senior sister, are you referring to Lu Qianqian? Yes. Xia Shuiyun thought of that woman who was even colder than herself. She subconsciously asked, "Is senior sister Lu doing well?" The Taishan Shenzong had focused on nurturing Lu Qianqian. All the inner and outer sect disciples idolized her. She was no exception. She had even mustered the courage to ask questions about martial arts. She's doing well. Su Xiaoma lowered his head and grabbed her hand. If you want to see her, I can take you to the Sect of All Times. The two awesome experts above were fighting fiercely, and this guy was still in the mood to flirt. He was indeed taught by Elder Wei himself. Xia Shuiyun glared at him, then hurriedly broke free and kept a distance from him. With a cold expression, she said, "Your patriarch wants to destroy my sect. We are enemies now. Su Xiaoma clutched the wound on her chest and said in pain, this is between them. We shouldn't get involved. Xia Shuiyan said, from today onwards, you and I have nothing to do with each other. The next time we meet, it's either you die or I die. Su Xiaoma's face was slightly ferocious. Whoosh! Suddenly, he rushed over and hugged Xia Shuiyan in his arms. The latter was ashamed and angry. She gathered her spiritual energy and blasted it at her chest. Boom! Boom! Under the bombardment, Su Xiaoma led the woman away from the lingering shockwaves and landed on a giant rock far away. She used her psionic powers to force her internal organs, causing her to spit out blood on the spot. Xia Shuiyan also realized that the man was not deliberately taking advantage of her, but saving her. So, she asked in a panic, Are you okay? Su Xiaoma's face was pale. You hit me so hard. Do you think you're okay? Tears gathered in Xia Shuiyan's eyes again. This man was obviously a liar and very detestable, but why did her heart hurt when she hit him? Su Xiaoma said, If I'm crippled by you, I'll have to rely on you to take care of me for the rest of my life. Xia Shuiyan glared at him and allowed him to continue hugging her without struggling. Although this man's appearance had changed, his voice, tone, and the aura he gave off were still Su Jintang and Go Sheng. In such a romantic environment, a fierce battle was still going on in the sky. Jun Changshao and Lan Jingting were still locked in a fierce battle. Whoosh! 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 The Taishan Shengzong Patriarch and the leaders no longer cared about the battle. They all flew up and hovered in the sky, unleashing their cultivation. Jun Changshao was here to cause trouble. In order to protect the sect, they did not mind outnumbering him. Shuiyan. Elder Xia said in a low voice, come back quickly. Xia Shuiyan hurriedly broke free from Su Xiaoma's arms and walked toward the Taishan Shengzong. But she stopped after a few steps. With her back to the man, she bit her thin lips and said, we're not destined to be together. Su Xiaoma said, Xia Shuiyan, remember this. I, Su Xiaoma, have lied to everyone in the Taishan Shengzong except you. My feelings for you are true. Xia Shuiyan walked away, tears flowing down her cheeks uncontrollably. The moment she walked through the broken gate, it meant that her feelings for him could only be buried in her heart forever. Boom! Boom! Jun Changshao and Lan Jingting exchanged a few more moves in the sky. He shouted through voice transmission, Su Xiaoma, if you're a man, take the woman you like away. I'll let you go far away. Whoosh! As soon as he finished speaking, Su Xiaoma rushed over and picked up Xia Shuiyan, who was crying and walking toward the sect. He turned into a stream of light and flew out. Let go of me, no. I want to hold you forever, until the end of time. Whoosh! At this moment, the Purple King flew over from afar in a hurry. When he saw the Patriarch fighting with a Wusheng at the Great Perfection stage and being surrounded by many powerhouses, he roared angrily, Patriarch, I'm coming. Boom! His clothes suddenly exploded. The shredded cloth happened to stick to Su Xiaoma's face as he flew past. When he took it off, the higher-ups of the sect of all times rushed over from afar. In an area even further away, hundreds of thousands of dire beasts were running wildly, stirring up waves of dust. Boom! 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 Zhong Yi, the leader of the cavalry wolf group, raised his dragon-tooth blade and shouted, prepare for battle. Whoosh! Whoosh! Thousands of members riding on hurricane wolves took out their dragon-tooth bows. They galloped over and pulled the bowstrings to gather arrows. The members of the tiger, leopard, lion, and other legions who arrived later also took out their dragon-tooth blades. Looking up into the sky, four legions that seemed to have been tempered thousands of times charged toward the Taishan Shengzong in different forms. It looked like a fierce siege was about to begin. Whoosh! Whoosh! The core disciples led by Li Qingyang also rushed over. When they confirmed that Su Xiaoma was fine, they all headed toward the Patriarch's position. In an instant, Jun Changshao, who originally looked weak, had gathered the higher-ups of the sect, disciples, and even a huge herd of dire beasts and armies behind him. The Taishan Shengzong, which had stood tall for thousands of years, was now shrouded in a strong murderous aura. From afar, it looked like it was trembling. Chapter 1078. In a very short time, the outside of the Taishan Shengzong was surrounded by the sect of all times. This was really a fight between the patriarch and the whole family. Especially the Purple King, whose strength was second only to the patriarch, was the first to rush over. He gathered his demon aura and punched at the Taishan Shengzong patriarch and the rest. Whoosh! 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 The purple fist mark was like a missile, dragging a stream of light behind it. Activate the Sect Protection Array. The Taishan Shengzong roared, quick! 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 Buzz! Buzz! In an instant, the array barrier materialized out of thin air and enveloped the broken mountain gate and the entire Taishan Shengzong, forming a strong enough defense system. It was normal for the top sects to have a sect protection array, but it was usually closed. After all, no one in the Falling Star continent dared to attack. However, it was this negligence that allowed Jun Changshao to barge in and destroy the mountain gate. Of course. With Go Sheng's strength. Even if the sect protection array was activated, it would only take 1 or 2 punches to get rid of him. It would not change the outcome of the mountain gate being destroyed. Boom! 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 The moment the Sect Protection Array was activated, the purple fist mark hit it mercilessly. Violent demon aura burst out, shocking the Taishan Shengzong's higher-ups. They all believed that this guy was not human. If I remember correctly. The Purple King flew to the vicinity of the array barrier and said furiously, back then, 5 Wusheng sealed me in the northern desert state. One of them was someone from the Taishan Shengzong. Northern Desert State. Sealed by 5 Wusheng. The Taishan Shengzong patriarch and the higher-ups were shocked. They said in unison, the Purple King. This guy is the Purple King who broke the seal. Hall Master Z raised his hands and a vast demonic aura filled the sky. His eyes were red as he said, today, I will take my revenge. Boom! 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 The fists formed by the purple demon aura came crashing down from above like a meteor. The originally sturdy array formation began to tremble violently after taking the brunt of the attack. Reinforce! Hurry up and cast your buffs! The Taishan Shengzong patriarch roared. The formation masters of the array formation hall spread out one after another and stood in the eye of the spring, injecting their spirit consciousnesses into it to reinforce and stabilize it. The current situation was, Jun Changshao and Lan Jingting were fighting fiercely in the air. The upper echelons of Taishan Shengzong were all hiding behind the sect-protecting formation to resist the Purple King's attacks. At the foot of the mountain, the 4 legions of the War Cavalry Department led by Zhong Yi were in position. The hundreds of thousands of orcs led by Elder Niu were also spreading out. It looked like they were going to surround the Taishan Shengzong. At the altar in Zhongzhuang State, the high priest saw that the warning points on the earth spirit meter had stopped moving. His mouth twitched as he said, they are indeed going to attack the Taishan Shengzong. High priest. An elder rushed in and said in shock, the Purple King has broken the seal and is leading hundreds of thousands of ferocious beasts to attack the Taishan Shengzong. The Patriarch of Taishan Shengzong is requesting reinforcements. What? The high priest almost jumped up. The altar would not intervene when the Demon Emperor's gate was causing trouble in the Jianghu. This was because it was a conflict between the sections. However, the Purple King was from the orcs. He was a threat to the entire human race on the Starfall continent. Therefore, they could not be bystanders. Quickly contact all the governors in the various states and counties. Tell them to send their elites to the Taishan Shengzong as soon as possible. Yes. Contact Governor Han and the others. Tell them to head to the Taishan Shengzong immediately. Yes. Announce to all fifth-rate sects and above that the Starfall continent has entered a level 1 state of alert. Tell all third-rate sects and above to send their elite disciples to the Taishan Shengzong as soon as possible. Yes. The authoritative altar once again notified the entire continent. The world that had just calmed down was once again bustling with noise and excitement. Whoosh! Whoosh! All the elites closest to the Taishan Shengzong rushed over as soon as possible. The altar did not explicitly state the Purple King's presence when it announced the level 1 state of alert. Now that it had made it clear, it meant that a fierce battle was about to break out. Therefore, they all made up their minds. These elites who rushed over were the first batch to enter the battlefield. Therefore, for the safety of the continent, they naturally did not care about their own lives. For a moment, elites from all over the world were rushing toward the Taishan Shengzong. This could be called a world war. The culprit, Jun Changshao, was still fighting fiercely with Lan Jingting. He did not care that the Purple King's identity had been exposed. With the strength of the sect of all times and the power of hard to stop, even if the news of Yao Menjiang's connate demonic body spread, he would not be afraid. It was no big deal. Go against the world. Boom! Boom! In front of the Taishan Shengzong array, the Purple King was still attacking. The anger that had been sealed for thousands of years was channeled into his fists, and he was venting it crazily. Boom! Suddenly, the sound of cannons could be heard. A huge cannonball with a trail of light behind it smashed into the array. The area of effect damage was extremely large, and the array shook violently. Puff! 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 The array masters of the Taishan Shengzong, who were already struggling to resist the Purple King's attack, all spat out blood. Their faces were extremely pale. Boom! Xiao Ziji, who was standing on the mountain top in the distance, fired again. The cannonball shot out from the cannon and smashed into the array again. The Purple King was not idle either. With the help of the field cannons, he unleashed his strength crazily to bombard the array. Ka ka ka, boom. In the end, the array of the Taishan Shengzong could not hold on any longer and collapsed on the spot. Plop! Plop! Dozens of array masters were sent flying, and they fell to the ground with blood spurting out. Die! After the array was broken, the Purple King rushed over. He gathered the power of demonic aura in his fists and smashed it down on the Taishan Shengzong's higher-ups. His goal was not to fight but to destroy. Stop him! The patriarch of the Taishan Shengzong roared angrily. Huff huff! Huff huff huff! Dozens of higher-ups rushed up without thinking about their own safety, and used all kinds of martial arts to meet the overwhelming demonic aura. Boom! 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 During this period of time, the Purple King's strength had also improved. In a fit of anger, he unleashed all his strength and shattered all kinds of attacks. Then, he gathered the demonic aura palm and smashed it down on the Taishan Shengzong's main hall. It was said that the main hall was the foundation of a sect. Today, I shall destroy it to avenge the hatred of being sealed for thousands of years. Beast, don't be so arrogant. In the area of the main hall, streaks of light appeared out of thin air. Then, each of them used their powerful martial arts to form a substantial defensive array. Boom! The demonic aura palm pressed down on the array, but it did not budge at all. The Purple King frowned and immediately flew back. These humans who appeared out of nowhere were actually at the level of Wu Sheng. Patriarch. A Taishan Shengzong elder said happily, reinforcements are here. Reinforcements are here. Whoosh! 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 At this moment, reinforcements from all over the world appeared in the sky one after another, bursting forth with their powerful cultivation to protect the sect that seemed to be trembling. The Taishan Shengzong patriarch heaved a long sigh of relief. Boom! Boom! In the sky, Jun Changshao and Lan Jingting exchanged a few more blows before they flew down. He hovered at the shattered gate, his eyes still flashing with anger. He said, "You want to protect the Taishan Shengzong? Castellan Han, who had just arrived, said in surprise, "June Patriarch, why are you here?" The reinforcements from all over the world were also stunned. "Everyone." The Taishan Shengzong Patriarch said in a deep voice, "This exhibitionist is the Purple King. He's with Jun Changshao." All the reinforcements widened their eyes. "That's right." Jun Changshao said coldly, "The Purple King is the Hall Master of the Sect of all times." Castellan Han's face turned ugly. The Purple King was the public enemy of the entire continent. Moreover, he was the kind that threatened the entire world. How could Jun Patriarch recruit him? Whoosh! Jun Changshao put on the true Yang armor and activated the mechanical armament wings. Then, he put on the true Yang mask and said word by word, "Today, I'm only targeting the Taishan Shengzong. If you protect him, you'll become the enemy of the Sect of all times. We'll fight to the death." The Demon Emperor's gate was strong. Emperor Jinwei was powerful. No, no, no. They were too weak in front of Jun Changshao. Because this guy was declaring war on the entire world. To be precise, he was threatening the entire world. Chapter 1079. The atmosphere in the Taishan Shengzong instantly froze. The expressions of the experts who came to help were extremely ugly because they were being threatened by Jun Changshao. If they dared to interfere with the Taishan Shengzong, it would be equivalent to becoming his enemy and he would fight to the death. The one who broke down the most was City Lord Han. At this time, he roared in his heart, "I shouldn't have appeared here. Can you turn back time and let me continue to bathe at home?" If it was a powerhouse with the same strength as Jun Changshao standing in front of them and threatening them like this, the experts would definitely not be happy. At most, they would represent the whole world and fight him to the end. However, this patriarch of the Sect of all times had helped the falling star continent resolve its biggest crisis, turning what should have been a trip to death into a walk in the spring. Not to mention his terrifying strength, just the kindness alone was not enough to fight him. Jun Changshao's extreme protective personality would cause some readers to feel uncomfortable, but don't forget that he had saved the world many times, although most of them were unintentional. Of course. It didn't mean that he could do whatever he wanted just because of this. Because without his previous kindness, he could still do whatever he wanted. In short, this guy could do things to save, but he could also do things to destroy. Good and evil. He had his own judgment in his heart. It was just that he couldn't tolerate someone bullying his disciple, especially Lu Qianshan. As a reader said in this chapter, without this eldest disciple joining the sect at the critical moment, Gosheng wouldn't even be able to leave the novice village. Today, controlled by anger, Jun Changshao only had one thought in his mind. Tear down the main hall of the Taishan Shengzong, and anyone who stood in his way would become his enemy. At that moment, Jun Changshao, who was hanging in front of the broken gate, faced the top Taishan Shengzong and the experts of the entire falling star continent, exuded an aura of disdain for the world. At the foot of the mountain, Yuan Gongzi's admiration for the patriarch was like a torrential river that flowed endlessly. In order to revive the demon sect's former glory, he had planned for a long time and had taken action not long ago. However, he had only launched sneak attacks on third-rate and fourth-rate sections. He did not dare to cause trouble for the top sects. Now, Jun Changshao was standing in front of Taishan Shengzong's mountain gate and challenging the entire world. This level of valiance was far beyond him. Awesome. Too awesome. Joining the sect of all times was a wise choice. The Purple King was also very pleased. Although he had always emphasized that he had joined the sect of all times for the sake of enduring hardships, he had already promised Jun Changshao that they would work together for a great cause. Now that they were facing off against the continent's strongest, wasn't this exactly what he wanted? Come on. Let's go crazy. Jun Changshao's sword warrior aura was released crazily, and the coldness in his eyes became more and more intense. He said, "You can either leave now, or fight to the death with me." Jun Patriarch. Mayor Han said, "Is it really just targeting Taishan Shengzong? That's right. Jun Changshao looked at Taishan Shengzong's main hall and said angrily, "This sect expelled my eldest disciple and crippled her cultivation. Today, I must seek justice for her. If that's the case, then this is a grudge between your sect and Taishan Shengzong. Naturally, I won't participate." Mayor Han cupped his hands. "Sorry for disturbing you. Goodbye." Whoosh, he disappeared in an instant and slipped away. He had a good relationship with Jun Changshao. No matter how he looked at it, he wouldn't become enemies with him. As for the altar's request for help, I shouldn't have heard it at that time. I should have stayed at home and enjoyed my bath. After Mayor Han left, the experts who were in a dilemma hurriedly cupped their hands and said, "It's not convenient for us to participate in the grudge between sections. Goodbye." Whoosh! 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 In an instant, the experts who appeared in Taishan Shengzong were the fastest to arrive and the fastest to leave. What a joke! With the strength of the sect of all times patriarch, who could defeat all dimensions, becoming enemies with him would be equivalent to dying. Besides, the exhibitionist was the Purple King. Previously, he obeyed Jun Changshao's words on the battlefield. How could he do such a thing without restraint? In a short time, the experts who came to help Taishan Shengzong all retreated. Of course, they didn't really leave. Instead, they stood at a distance and watched the show. Sigh, Taishan Shengzong is really unlucky to have offended the sect of all times. The eldest disciple Jun Patriarch was talking about should be Lu Chanshan. Back in northeast Lu province, the extreme cold palace was almost destroyed because of her. For a disciple, he's willing to go against the whole world. Jun Patriarch is really fierce. Lu Chanshan is beautiful, and she's about the same age as Jun Changshao. Maybe they're master and disciple on the surface, but they have an intimate relationship behind the scenes. The martial artists started to discuss quietly. Taishan Shengzong. The patriarch and the higher-ups had ugly expressions on their faces. The arrival of the reinforcements gave them the confidence to fight against Jun Changshao. However, they were scared away in the blink of an eye. This was too fucked up. Jun Changshao. Lan Jingting hovered above the main hall and said in a low voice, "Lu Chanshan has been expelled. She probably hasn't joined the sect of all times yet. Why are you making things difficult for her?" After the battle just now, he realized that it would be difficult for him to defeat Lu Xian. Moreover, they were in their own territory. There was no benefit in fighting him. Jun Changshao said coldly, "What kind of heinous crime did my eldest disciple commit? Not only was she expelled by your sect, but her cultivation was also crippled." This, Lan Jingting was speechless. He only found out about Lu Chanshan's expulsion later. He did not expect the elders to cripple her cultivation as a punishment. After all, she had just passed away. The woman valued her disciple. Even if she had done something wrong, she should not have crippled her cultivation. "Looks like you don't know." Jun Changshao tilted his head and turned to the Taishan Shengzong patriarch. He said in a sinister tone, "As the leader of a sect, you should know the reason, right? I'd like to hear it." The Taishan Shengzong patriarch was also speechless. Jun Changshao. At this moment, Elder Chu, who had been sent flying, said with a pale face, "It was my decision to cripple Lu Chanshan's cultivation. I want revenge, bam." Jun Changshao suddenly appeared in front of her and assumed the posture of a violent volley. As for Elder Chu, she had been sent flying by the kick and crashed into the mountain with a loud bang. "Old witch. So it's you who's causing trouble." The power of this kick was terrifying. Elder Chu was sunk into the wall, and her internal organs were directly ruptured. Even if she was lucky enough to survive, she would probably become a cripple in the future. The corners of the mouths of the powerhouses in the distance twitched violently. This guy could kick a Taishan Shengzong elder, who was at the level of Wu Sheng, half to death. This guy was really strong. Whoosh! Jun Changshao raised his hand and grabbed the unconscious Fang Lingyu with the power of spiritual energy. He said, "This woman has a grudge against my first disciple. She was probably the one who instigated him to cripple her cultivation. Whoosh! Whoosh! Violent spiritual energy spread out with a roar. At this moment, he only needed to think for a moment, and the genius that Taishan Xingzong had focused on cultivating would die. Elder Chu was sent flying by the violent kick. Fong Lingyu was caught and could die at any time. The Taishan Xingzong Patriarch and even Lan Jingting were indifferent. That was because there were field cannons on the mountain top in the distance. Wu Huang of the Sect of All Times and half a step away from Wu Sheng stood behind Jun Changshao. There were also several cavalry regiments and hundreds of thousands of ferocious beasts at the foot of the mountain. Such a luxurious lineup was too much of a bully. At this moment, Fong Lingyu, who was shrouded in spiritual energy, woke up from her coma and screamed with a hideous expression. Jun Changshao wanted to kill her. But he would never let her die in a coma. Fong Lingyu was shrouded in a terrifying pressure. Her body and soul were being tortured. She screamed in pain when she found that the Patriarch and the leaders were there. She shouted, "Sect! Patriarch! Save me!" Jun Changshao pulled her in front of him and said coldly, "Nobody in this world can save you." The aura of death rose in Fong Lingyu's heart. Horror appeared on her hideous face. "Die!" Jun Changshao raised his hand and lifted her into the sky. Lan Jingting and the Taishan Xingzong Patriarch both clenched their fists. Fong Lingyu was a genius that Taishan Xingzong had focused on cultivating after all. If she was killed by Jun Changshao in front of everyone, it would be tantamount to tearing down their headquarters again. "Patriarch!" Suddenly, a cold voice came from afar. All the experts looked over and saw a beautiful woman in a snow-white dress appear out of nowhere on the mountain top in the distance. Lu Qianshan. She was the person who caused the conflict between the Sect of All Times and the Taishan Xingzong. Why is senior sister here? Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others were stunned. Li Luoqiu contacted everyone except for Lu Qianshan, who was training in the Tower of Trials. "Qianshan." Jun Changshao raised Fong Lingyu and said murderously, "Today, I will help you take revenge for being expelled and crippled by the Taishan Xingzong. I will tear down the Eternal Hall." Plop! Lu Qianshan suddenly knelt down. Her beautiful face was covered with frost. She said in a pleading tone, "I have nothing to do with the Taishan Xingzong. Patriarch, please don't make things difficult for them." Senior sister, Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others were in disbelief. Jun Changshao was also stunned. This woman, who used to think that he was too kind, knelt down and begged for mercy from the Taishan Xingzong who had bullied her. That was not right. Was her brain kicked by a donkey? Or was it squeezed by the door? "Get up." Jun Changshao's anger quickly subsided after Lu Qianshan knelt down. He said with heartache, "The floor is cold." Lu Qianshan did not get up. Because the Patriarch still had no intention of letting go of the Taishan Xingzong. Sigh. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, "I am too soft-hearted. I can't bear to see my disciples suffer." Then, he withdrew the power of the sword and martial sages and put Fong Lingyu down. The Purple King also withdrew the demon aura that had spread out. Level 1 alert is lifted. Zhong Yi shouted, and the members of the army put down their weapons. The tense atmosphere that shrouded the Taishan Xingzong instantly disappeared without a trace. If it weren't for eldest disciple pleading for leniency, this king wouldn't have spared your Supreme Mystery Holy Sect. Jun Changshao glowered at Supreme Mystery Holy Sect's sect master and upper echelons, waving his robe as he barked, "Return to the sect." Swish! At this moment, Lu Qianshan flew down from the mountain peak. She stood in front of Fong Lingyu, who was breathing rapidly, and said coldly, "Get up and fight me to the death." Jun Changshao's mouth twitched. This woman wanted to do it herself. 3,000 plus words. P.S. Add 104. Shamelessly asking for recommendation tickets and monthly tickets. Chapter 1080. With Jun Changxiao's superior's attitude, the Taishan Xingzong main hall would definitely be destroyed. However, at this critical juncture, Lu Qianxian rushed over and knelt on the mountain peak, begging the patriarch to spare the Taishan Xingzong. On many occasions, she had hoped that Go Sheng would be decisive and not merciful. Why would she plead for mercy for a sect that had banished her and crippled her cultivation? Because no matter how much she hated this place, it was still her home. Lu Qianxian had been taken in by the late Grand Elder since she was young and had treated her as her own child. When her lifespan was almost up, she had even taught her the Taishan Ice Heart technique, giving her a chance to rise again even if her cultivation was crippled. Although she was kneeling to persuade Jun Changxiao to be merciful, she was also kneeling to the late Grand Elder who had doted on her since she was young. She was telling her spirit in heaven that she had returned. Lu Qianxian was cold but not cold. She had 7 emotions and 6 desires, but she also had a grateful heart. Even though the Taishan Xingzong had crippled her cultivation and banished her, for the sake of the Grand Elder, she did not wish for the sect that she had once protected to be destroyed just like that. Because of this, after joining the sect of all times, she did not mention a word about her past and faced it as if everything was in the past. However, if she did not take the initiative to say it, Jun Changxiao would take the initiative to find out. My eldest disciple did not commit any heinous crimes. You banished her and even crippled her cultivation. Aren't you forcing her to her death? Admittedly, I am grateful to the Taishan Xingzong. If you did not banish Lu Qianxian, there would not be the current eldest disciple of the sect of all times. However, this cannot cover up your murderous methods. Therefore, regardless of whether it was a few years ago or tens of thousands of years ago, since I know about it, I must seek an explanation. Suppose the person involved was Yi Xingchen. Back then, he was plotted against and his soul was forced to be nurtured in the earth's core. It was only a few thousand years ago that he was reborn. Would Jun Changxiao be indifferent after knowing about it? Yes. Night Emperor did not join the sect of all times back then. However, he is my disciple now. Everything in his past and present is related to me. Lu Qianxian understood Jun Changxiao's character very well. She knew that he would cause the situation to become uncontrollable and complicated, so she could only kneel and beg. Not to mention, this move was a clever move. Jun Changxiao's anger immediately calmed. Since this disciple didn't want to pursue the past mistakes of the Supreme Profound Sacred Sect, he could only sound the drums and withdraw his troops. Fong Su's hatred. He would not did not kill her. He would not's hatred. And she. Lu Qianxian seemed to be able to read his mind. She landed in front of the woman and immediately initiated a life-and-death battle. Lu Qianxian. Fong Lingyu was lying on the ground in pain. Her eyes flashed with anger. You want to take advantage of me? In the demonic dragon cave, she bombarded the wall with her body and was restrained by Jun Changxiao's overbearing psionic power. She was now seriously injured. How could she stand up and fight? Swish! Lu Qianxian waved her hand. A healing pill flew into Fong Lingyu's mouth. Jun Changxiao felt a little heartache. This woman got lucky. After taking the healing pill, Fong Lingyu's injuries quickly recovered. She stood up in shock and said in disbelief, "What did you give me?" Death pill. Lu Qianxian took out the cold light sword and said, "Take out your weapon. Let me see how much the girl who used to please me has grown." Fong Lingyu also had an ice physique. But standing in front of her, regardless of temperament or appearance, she was defeated. Clang! Fong Lingyu unsheathed her sword and said hatefully, "Lu Qianxian, I'm no longer who I used to be." Whoosh! The ice attribute spread out and gathered on the sword, forming pieces of ice. Swish! She took a step forward and used the ice sword technique of Taishan Xingzong. The extremely cold air wantonly spread out, forming a dazzling sword shadow. Then, Puchi! Suddenly, the sword flashed. Fong Lingyu was stunned. Then, her face became ferocious. Clank! Because the tendons of her hand were cut, the weapon fell to the ground with blood. Whoosh! Poochie! The sword flashed again. Fong Lingyu's left wrist also had a slender sword mark. Blood splashed out. Her face was more ferocious. So weak? Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others shook their heads. They thought that this genius that Taishan Shengzong focused on nurturing would be very strong and could exchange dozens of moves with their senior sister. They didn't expect her hands to be crippled so easily. Lu Qianqian put away her sword and said lightly, "You're still as weak as before." Fong Lingyu's face was as ferocious as a devil's. A strong sense of unwillingness rose in her heart. This woman's cultivation was obviously crippled. Even if there was a way to repair it, how could she become stronger in just a few years? In the past, Lu Qianqian was her senior sister. In terms of martial arts cultivation, there was only a certain gap between them. Now, compared to her, it seemed unattainable. Why? Why was this? Swish! Suddenly, Lu Qianqian approached. Her palm, which contained the power of extreme cold, directly hit her dantian. Her internal spiritual nucleus suddenly cracked, bringing intense pain that made her faint on the spot. Her hands were crippled, and her dantian was crippled. Fong Lingyu was basically abused to the point where she couldn't take care of herself. She was the one who instigated Lu Qianqian to cripple her cultivation. Now that she had ended up like this, she deserved it. As for the executor, Elder Chu, his meridians were also broken by Jun Changxiao's kick. Even if his injuries recovered, it was unknown whether he could continue to cultivate martial arts in the future. Karma reincarnation, retribution is not good. Patriarch. Lu Qianqian sheathed her sword and said, "Let's go back." "Aren't you going to kill her to prevent future trouble?" Jun Changxiao asked. Lu Qianqian said, "Didn't Patriarch once say that sparing a life is better than building a 7-floor pagoda?" Ha! Jun Changxiao was startled and secretly said, "I said that." The system said, when the host went to Qingyang City to participate in the recruitment of numerous sects and saved Li Qingyang, he said that saving a life is better than building a 7-floor pagoda. Sparing people and saving people have different meanings. However, how many years has it been? She actually still remembers my words in her heart. The system added, in a world where martial arts are respected, saving irrelevant people is simply stupid to the extreme. Naturally, it will leave a deep impression on the eldest disciple. The proposal and the executor who crippled Lu Qianqian's cultivation received the same punishment. Jun Changxiao did not make things difficult for Taishan Shengzong and immediately left with his disciples. However, before walking down the mountain, he turned to look at the patriarch of Taishan Shengzong and said lightly, "You are very incompetent as a patriarch. You should quickly step down and give it to someone who is capable." Patriarch Xi's face was extremely ugly. "Let's go." Under the gaze of all the experts, Jun Changxiao led the crowd and left, and the hundreds of thousands of beasts gathered at the foot of the mountain also evacuated. At this point, the crisis of Taishan Shengzong was quelled. The price to pay was that the mountain gate, the sect protection array were broken, and Elder Chu and the key disciples were crippled. Oh, right. There was also an inner court female disciple who was abducted by the disciples of the sect of all times. "Let me go." "Not letting go. Not letting go. I won't let go. You, the patriarch doesn't want me anymore. I can't lose you too. From today onwards, we will wander the world together. It's best to give me a few sons and continue the Su family's bloodline." In the sky, Su Xiaoma flew at top speed, allowing Xia Shuiyun to struggle in his arms without letting go, because if he let go, love would be gone. Chapter 1081. Jun Changxiao wreaked havoc in the Taishan Shengzong and almost escalated into a world war. Fortunately, Lu Qianqian appeared and ended the matter. However, only crippling the two instigators and not extorting their martial arts resources was not like Go Xing's style at all. Fuck. After returning to the sect, Jun Changshao slapped his forehead and said, "I forgot." "Forget it, forget it." He shook his head and said, "For the sake of the first and third disciples, I won't be calculative with them." Hall Masterly Jun Changshao immediately ordered, "Inform Xiao Mu to settle the relationship issue as soon as possible and return to the sect to cultivate." He did not object to his disciples being in love. However, if they were to cultivate because of this, he would definitely not allow it. After all, young people should prioritize their career and not be too immersed in love. To be honest, he was also a little jealous. Even when he went undercover, he could still pick up girls. Sigh. Fortunately, he did not go. Otherwise, all the female disciples of the Taishan Shengzong would be attracted to him. The system was speechless. Where did his confidence come from? Understood. Li Luoqiu hurriedly contacted the various county branches and successfully contacted Su Xiaoma, who was in a remote village. This guy carried Xia Shuiyun and flew over thousands of mountains and rivers to find a quiet place, planning to start a sincere relationship with her here. Shuiyun. Su Xiaoma said seriously, "My patriarch has already left, Taishan Shengzong is not destroyed, you can rest assured." Xia Shuiyun stood in the room and glared at him with a frosty face. "That year in the Yunling Mountains, was it your sect of all times who arranged for a large number of beasts to attack?" "Yes." "Was it also your sect of all times who arranged for the powerful beasts to attack the Golden Scale Mountain?" "Yes." Su Xiaoma confessed. At this point, there was no need to hide anymore. "Liar." Xia Shuiyun gritted her teeth. Back then, in the Yunling Mountains, he had risked his life to stand up for her, thus arousing her good impression of him. After that, they had slowly built up their relationship, but in the end, it was all a scam. Everything had been set up. Su Xiaoma said, "Xia Shuiyun, I can tell you very responsibly that although I lied to you, I was undercover in Taishan Shengzong. I didn't mean any harm. I just wanted to find out about eldest senior sister and Fang Lingyu. The author can testify to this." Su Gosheng's spy was to obtain information. Later, when Jun Changshao made a scene at Taishan Shengzong, it was also this woman who spread the news. "Get out." Xia Shuiyun pointed at the door. "I've already lost my sect. If I lose you as well, there's no meaning in living in this world." Su Xiaoma walked out dejectedly. Xia Shuiyun, who was standing in front of the window, looked at his lonely back and felt her heart ache for no reason. Clang! After walking out, Su Xiaoma stood in the courtyard. He took out the True Yang sword and wiped it with his sleeve, a resolute look in his eyes. Xia Shuiyun saw this and hurriedly rushed out. "What are you doing?" "Don't worry about me," Su Xiaoma said sorrowfully. Xia Shuiyun wanted to persuade him, but when she saw that guy raise his sword, she could only throw caution to the wind and rush over. Swoosh! The sword flashed and the sound of something being cut could be heard. Xia Shuiyun felt a stabbing pain in her heart. Tears flowed uncontrollably as she said, "Why did you take things so hard? Come. Eat an apple." Suddenly, Su Xiaoma took a slice of the apple and said with a smile. Xia Shuiyun, who had already developed feelings for him, was dumbstruck. So he wasn't trying to commit suicide. He was trying to cut an apple. She said angrily, "Su Xiaoma, you've gone too far." Ugh! Su Xiaoma held her in his arms and lowered his head. Under the setting sun, this man and woman, who both had each other in their hearts, hugged each other. The entire world seemed to come to a standstill, and the ground was covered in dog food. Su Xiaoma didn't immediately return to the sect of all times. He temporarily stayed with Xia Shuiyun in the village. Every day, he tried to persuade her to forgive him and to accept that he was actually Su Jintang, Su Gosheng. With Elder Wei's guidance, his feelings were strong. Xia Shuiyun, who was originally estranged from him, couldn't hold her ground and gradually opened her heart to accept him. However, every time she thought of Jun Changshao standing arrogantly in front of the Taishan Shengzong, she would inadvertently feel estranged and even deliberately try to avoid him. Shuiyun. Su Xiaoma said, although eldest senior sister made a mistake back then, it wasn't enough to have her cultivation crippled. She was treated unfairly because of Fang Lingyu, so it's reasonable for my patriarch to seek justice. Xia Shuiyun fell silent. Lu Qianqian's matter was rarely mentioned in the sect. It was probably because the elder misused his authority and punished her severely. In the demonic dragon cave, that vicious woman lured out spiritual beasts. If it weren't for my strength, I probably would have died a long time ago, Su Xiaoma said. Also, after I was seriously injured, she wanted to kill me. If I hadn't resolved it, I would have died a second time. Xia Shuiyun, who had been silent all this time, raised her head and said, "You're saying so much because you want to tell me that senior sister Fang brought all of this upon herself?" "That's right," Su Xiaoma said. Xia Shuiyun said, "Our Taishan Xingzong's mountain gate was broken and our reputation in the Jianghu was lost. Was that also our own fault?" This, Su Xiaoma fell silent for a while and said, "Based on how much the patriarch values senior sister, it's already very benevolent of him to only break your Taishan Xingzong's mountain gate and punish the two main culprits." Xia Shuiyun said, "Should I thank your patriarch?" "What I mean is that the matter between senior sister Fang Lingyu and senior sister Fang Lingyu ended in this way. It's a happy ending for both our sects," Su Xiaoma said. Xia Shuiyun fell silent. Sure enough, different standpoints led to different views. Su Xiaoma wanted to continue to persuade her, but he suddenly heard the news from the drizzle hall, so he changed his words and said, "Shuiyun, I just received news that the patriarch of your sect has resigned from the position of patriarch." Xia Shuiyun was stunned. The news that the patriarch of Xi had resigned from the position of Taishan Xingzong patriarch had already spread in Jianghu. As for the reason for his resignation, it was because the mountain gate that had existed for a long time was destroyed, and the main hall was almost destroyed. He felt ashamed to face the ancestors of the sect. Grand Elder Lan Jingting allowed him to resign. In fact, after learning that Lu Qianqian had been severely punished, he had criticized the patriarch of Xi for being too lenient with the elders in handling the affairs of the sect. But he didn't expect that the crisis of Jun Changshao causing trouble in Taishan Xingzong would be buried later. The patriarch of Taishan Xingzong also deeply blamed himself for not properly controlling the elders as the sect leader in the past, causing the sect to almost be destroyed. Thus, he made the decision to resign. After the discussion of the elders, Su Xiaoma said, "The third elder is temporarily acting as the patriarch." Xia Shuiyun said, "The third elder is in charge of internal affairs all year round, separating public from private interests. It's a wise choice for him to take over the position of patriarch." "Yes." Su Xiaoma said, "The third elder is also very good to me. If it weren't for the fact that he valued me, we might not have developed feelings for each other over time." "Humph." Xia Shuiyun curled her lips and said, "Who developed feelings for you?" Su Xiaoma leaned over and said with a smile, "Feelings are in the past. In the future, you will have to bear my children." "Who wants to bear your children?" Xia Shuiyun turned her head away in shame. "Oh, right." Su Xiaoma said, "There's another news. Do you want to hear it?" "What news?" "Elder Xia has been promoted to acting deputy patriarch." "Ah." Xia Shuiyun's eyes widened. Su Xiaoma said with a smile, "The patriarch ordered me to hurry back and prepare a generous gift to Taishan Xingzong to propose marriage to Elder Xia. My grandfather's words don't count. My words count." Xia Shuiyun said. Su Xiaoma moved closer and took out the bottle of tranquil heart and icy skin pills. He said seriously, "This is what you gave me. I've been keeping it. Can I use it as an engagement token?" "You're not allowed to refuse." He then added, "Because you still have my supreme treasure fragment in your possession." Chapter 1082. The resignation of the Taishan Xingzong patriarch and the temporary appointment of the third elder as the acting patriarch caused a huge uproar in the pugilistic world. As a top sect, internal affairs, especially the change of the patriarch's position, were of the utmost importance. Of course, many martial artists also knew that the resignation of the patriarch definitely had something to do with Jun Changshao. Hence, they all lamented, this is directly causing the leader of a top sect to step down. Who asked Lu Qianqian to be the first disciple of the sect of all times? Jun Changshao has always been protective of his disciples, and his disciples' cultivation was once crippled. The Taishan Shengzong can only admit that it's bad luck. I'm afraid this matter won't end just like that, right? Many people were discussing how the newly appointed acting patriarch would face the sect of all times. Would he choose to bear with it or fight it head-on? After all, the sect was destroyed by that guy. Just as everyone was waiting for the follow-up, an explosive piece of news came. That was, Jun Changshao would soon bring the betrothal gifts to the Taishan Shengzong to propose marriage. When the various martial artists received the news, they were all dumbfounded. He had just destroyed the sect's face and now he was going to propose marriage? What kind of play was Jun Changshao putting on? Of course. As the party involved, the higher-ups of the Taishan Shengzong were also discussing this matter. Everyone. Yu Linyun, who had just taken over as the acting patriarch, sat at the head of the table and said with a frown, soon, the patriarch of the sect of all times will personally bring his disciple to propose marriage. What do you think? A hint of anger flashed in the eyes of the elders. How could he have the face to propose marriage after causing such a huge ruckus in their own sect? Or did he really think that the Taishan Shengzong was a soft persimmon that could be bullied at will? Patriarch. Elder Sun said, although the sect of all times has a grudge with us, it was all built on Elder Chu and Fong Lingyu. Now that he has crippled their cultivation, the grudge has been settled. Why don't we befriend them? Not bad. Another elder standing at the side agreed. In this world, who didn't know the strength of the sect of all times? Especially when they were attacking a sect, they could mobilize hundreds of thousands of beasts. It was enough to shake the heavens and earth. If they chose to go against them, their heads would definitely be kicked by a donkey. In the face of absolute power, even the top sects had to admit defeat. Elder Sun said, Vice Patriarch Xia, Jun Changshao is here to propose marriage to your granddaughter on behalf of Su Xiaomu. As the person involved, you should express your opinion. Everyone looked at Xia Tie, who had just been promoted from elder to vice patriarch, and waited for him to make a decision. Elder Xia. Yu Linyun said solemnly, you have to think carefully. To be honest, he didn't want to be on bad terms with the sect of all times. Now that Jun Changshao announced that he was here to propose marriage, it was undoubtedly a message that he wanted to befriend them. If he rejected it, there would be more trouble. Sensing that everyone was looking at him, Xia Tie resisted the pressure and said, I still say the same thing. Shui Yun's marriage will be decided by her. Yu Linyun shook his head and said, that girl isn't in the sect. How can we let her make the decision? Report. A disciple came and said, Sister Xia is back. Good, good. Yu Linyun hurriedly said, quick. Quick. Let her come to the main hall quickly. Yes. After a while, Xia Shuiyun entered the main hall. Before the patriarch and grandfather could say anything, she knelt on the ground and said, Patriarch, I agree to this marriage. Yu Linyun immediately let out a long breath. As long as the person involved agreed, it meant that they could be on good terms with the sect of all times. In fact, if Xia Shuiyun didn't agree, the higher-ups of the Taishan Shengzong would have counseled her after weighing the pros and cons. After all, the sect's interests were greater than anything else. Shuiyun. Xia Tie said in a deep voice, did that kid force you to agree? Others wouldn't care about sacrificing the happiness of a female disciple in exchange for the sect's interests, but as her closest relative, he couldn't tolerate his granddaughter giving in under certain means. Grandfather. Xia Shuiyun said, you should know my granddaughter's personality. If she's not willing, no one can force her. Xia Tie fell into a short silence and sighed, since it's your choice, I won't stop you. Then it's decided. Yu Linyan said, the Taishan Shengzong agrees to this marriage. 3 days later, Jun Changshao, dressed in white, came to the Taishan Shengzong again. Accompanying him was Su Xiaoma, the protagonist of this marriage proposal, as well as Jiang Ye, Ding Xingwang, Ge Qingming, and other elders of the sect of all times. Yu Linyan gave him the best treatment. The grudge between the two sects was formed when the former patriarch was in charge. Now that he was in charge, the grudge wouldn't continue. Instead, he would try his best to improve it, from hostility to friendship. Vice Patriarch Xia. After entering the main hall, Jun Changshao took out 10 heavy boxes and went straight to the point. The betrothal gift I brought is 100,000 six-pointed star stones. Please don't laugh at it. Su Xiaoma was stunned. The patriarch actually used the 9 heavens continent spirit stones as a betrothal gift for his marriage, and 100,000 of them at that. This was simply, no. He was so moved that he was about to cry. 6-pointed star stones? Yu Linyan and the other elders looked at each other. Obviously, they hadn't heard of this or before. Jun Changshao explained, this item is a martial resource from the 9 heavens continent, the first tier of the dimensional battlefield. The spiritual energy it contains is equivalent to 10 of our falling star continent spirit stones. What? Yu Linyan and the others opened their eyes wide. 1 stone was equivalent to 10, and 100,000 stones was equivalent to 1 million stones. Big deal. Absolutely big deal. Xia Tie's mouth twitched slightly. According to the customs of the falling star continent, even if a noble family proposed marriage, the betrothal gift would only be a few 100,000 silvers. The rich ones would use gold instead. This kind of martial resource as a betrothal gift was equivalent to 1 million spirit stones. It was simply inhumane. Of course. Jun Changshao said again, this is just a part of it. Shwa. A few pieces of space landed in front of Xia Tie's table and said, there are various ores and herbs inside, worth a total of 10 million silvers. Vice Patriarch Xia, please agree to the marriage between my disciple and your granddaughter. Since everyone was a martial artist, the betrothal gift had to be based on martial arts. Gold, silver, and other valuables were simply too low. Patriarch Su Xiaoma was really moved to tears. If he didn't join the sect of all times in this life, he would probably have to sell everything in order to gather enough betrothal gifts. Yu Linyan cupped his hands and said respectfully, Jun Patriarch, you're really generous. Jun Changshao said, if Vice Patriarch Xia has no objections, let's discuss a specific time for the engagement. According to the customs of the falling star continent, a marriage proposal didn't mean that they would get married immediately. They needed to hold an engagement ceremony first. All right. Xia Tie said. Since his granddaughter agreed, he naturally wouldn't object. Thus, both sides discussed the engagement ceremony for half an hour. In the end, they decided to hold the engagement ceremony on the 6th of next month at the Sect of all times. However, after everything was discussed, Jun Changshao was about to leave. Xia Shuiyan walked out from behind the scenes, and said, Jun Patriarch, I have a request. What request? Su Xiaoma and I still have to put our minds on martial arts cultivation. After the engagement, please don't arrange the marriage too early. Jun Changshao laughed, you two can decide on the matter of marriage yourself. I am only responsible for preparing the wedding and waiting for the wedding banquet. Thank you. Xia Shuiyan said. Su Xiaoma was speechless. But if they were to get married early, what was the point of getting engaged? On the same day, the Sect of all times' intelligence agency began to operate. All the fifth-rate sects and above, as well as the prestigious families, received the engagement invitation one after another. It can't be. After a patriarch received it, he said in shock, it's just a disciple's engagement ceremony, and the invitation was sent to my southeastshire province? Isn't this a little too grand? The wedding was the most important event in life. The engagement ceremony was nothing more than a banquet for relatives and friends. The sect of all times sending out engagement invitations all over the world was simply too high profile. Jun Changshao was thinking the same thing. Su Xiaoma set the precedent for the sect of all times disciples to get engaged. It had to be grand and beautiful. Patriarch. One of the higher-ups asked, "Are you going?" "Yes." The patriarch said, "The sect of all times sent out an invitation. Who in this world dares to not go?" Thus, many families and sects began to prepare. Jun Changshao found Li Qingyang and said, "According to the customs of the falling star continent, how much money should the people who participate in the engagement ceremony bring?" The system roared, "What grand and beautiful! This is the reason for sending out the invitations." Chapter 1083. The sect of all times had just caused a ruckus in Taixuan Shenzong and shocked the powerhouses from all over the world. Who would dare to reject an invitation from them? Would they just go and be done with it? Not to mention the money, they should at least bring some gifts. The Gosheng invited were all reputable people. They definitely couldn't go with just their mouths, so they would naturally be prepared. Thinking about it this way, he gave the Taixuan Shenzong nearly 10 million ores and herbs, so he could make up for some of it from them. The loss wasn't too big. As for the 100,000 six-pointed star stones, Jun Changshao was willing to take them out for his disciple, so he naturally wouldn't mind. At most. Well, when he ran out, he would take the things to the Nine Heavens continent to exchange. Although there weren't many plots left in the plain battlefield, its use had been raised to another level. It was used as a transfer station for transactions. If he lacked high-level spirit stones, he could go to other planes to exchange for them. Beep, beep. In the cafeteria, Jun Changshao sat down and said, "On the 6th of next month, your senior brother will hold an engagement ceremony. I'll leave the matters of the banquet to your dining hall." "Yes." Lu Wancher nodded heavily, then began to prepare. She personally went to the patriarch, hoping to transfer some money. After all, it was very expensive to hold a big banquet. The stingy Yuan Gongzi immediately transferred a lot of money. The patriarch dared to give the Taixuan Shenzong a super luxurious betrothal gift, so he must value Su Xiaoma very much. The banquet of the engagement ceremony couldn't be careless. 10 days later, on the 4th of the new month, the disciples began to get busy, and the sect was suddenly decorated with lanterns and colored banners. Martial artists from all over the world entered Ironbone Town one after another. The number of people expanded from a few hundred to a few thousand, and there were even people rushing over on horses. I'm afraid that just the money from the gifts alone will be a considerable amount of income. Jun Changshao, who was sitting in the main hall, used his spiritual senses to envelop Ironbone Town at the foot of the mountain. Looking at the warriors coming and going, a smile appeared on his face. The warriors who came early would definitely need food, drinks, and lodging. Moreover, all of them were rich, so they would naturally bring a lot of benefits to Ironbone Town. This was especially true for the Tang's elixir store, which was located in the town. It had always been a popular business, but now, it was crowded with people both inside and outside the store. Whoosh! Outside Ironbone Town, City Lord Han landed and walked into the town. Due to the strength of the sect of all times, martial artists from all walks of life were forced to attend the engagement ceremony. When he received the invitation, not only was he very happy, he even hoped that the day would come sooner. Mu Changhong, Situ Haoyun, Yi Tianqing, and other people who had a good relationship with Jun Changshao were naturally happy to congratulate him. He even thought that exchanging cash gifts for a sumptuous banquet was definitely a good deal. Without sufficient strength and status, it would be difficult for cultivators from other provinces to receive an invitation. However, in the Azure Sun County, as long as they were from a sect or clan, regardless of their cultivation level or strength, they would all receive an invitation. Even Qin Haoren, Shen Tong, and the others were on the invitation list. Of course, their ally, the Blue Mountain Sect, was indispensable. Not only did they arrive early, but they were also invited to the sect of all times and placed in a VIP courtyard. Patriarch. Li Qingyang reported, Palace Master Shi is here. Quickly invite her in. As the second ally of the sect of all times, Ingenious Flower Palace also received high treatment and was placed in an independent courtyard adjacent to the Blue Mountain sect. June Patriarch did not hesitate to become enemies with the entire world for his eldest disciple. This master-disciple relationship is admirable, Shi Jingxian said. Jun Changshao said, you flatter me, Palace Master Shi. The system instigated, using cheesy words at this time will definitely work. Host, why don't you try it? Scram. Speaking of cheesy words, Goshen felt sad. Because after many tests, he was completely in the 0.01 range, so when he burned it, he swore that he would never say it again. The system said, Sai, if you don't use it on the right person, it will be intolerable for him to be single. Palace Master Shi. Jun Changshao said, disciples' engagement is coming soon, and there are many things to take care of. Jun, please excuse me. Shi Jingxian smiled, this is not the first time I've been to the sect of all times, so I'm very familiar with this place. Jun Patriarch, you don't have to mind me. Go do your own things. Goodbye. Jun Changshao left the courtyard and pointed at Li Fei who was hanging lanterns in the distance, saying, Brat, hang them properly for me. Shi Jingxian walked out of the courtyard with nothing to do, admiring the majestic buildings and fairyland-like scenery along the way. After walking for some time, she suddenly stopped because Lu Qianqian appeared in front of her and said coldly, the back of the mountain is restricted. Trespassers are not allowed to enter. Oh. Shi Jingxian responded, then looked at the woman who was excellent in both appearance and temperament. She smiled, Jun Patriarch is willing to become enemies with the world for Miss Lu. How enviable. Lu Qianqian did not say anything. Shi Jingxian pointed at the scenic spot in the distance, saying, can I go there? Yes, Lu Qianqian said calmly. Shi Jingxian said, goodbye. Lu Qianqian frowned as she watched the palace mistress of Miaohua Palace leave. She thought to herself, what did she mean by that? The 6th day of the new year. It was an auspicious day. The sky was just beginning to brighten. A large group of martial artists walked up the long stairs to the entrance of the sect of all times. Southeast Shi Province, Helen City, Chui family. Gift of 500 artificial spirit stones. Southwest Yang Province, Qingyang City, Li family. Gift of 1,000 artificial spirit stones. Northeast Lu Province, Li Tian took out a loudspeaker and shouted as the masters and elders of the sects entered the sect of all times. Sima Zhongda urged, don't keep shouting. Let me shout as well. Let me show my face. Go rest somewhere else. Jun Patriarch, congratulations on your disciple's engagement. Congratulations to you, congratulations to you. Jun Changshao, who was standing in front of the main hall, welcomed the various heroes who had come with him with a warm smile on his face. About 2 hours later, martial artists from all over the world sat at the banquet table in the martial arts arena. The people involved in the engagement, Su Xiaoma and Xia Shuiyun, also appeared on the engagement stage. The engagement ceremony was very simple. The closest relatives sat in the main hall and were served tea by the engaged couple. Su Xiaoma's parents were a little nervous. After all, they were just ordinary people, and they were surrounded by martial arts experts. The scene was a little scary. However, when they saw their beautiful daughter-in-law kneeling down, a smile appeared on their faces. Xia Shuiyun's parents sat on the side of the bride's side. They were not very talented in martial arts. Although they were disciples of the Taishan Xingzong, they were always running the sect's businesses outside and rarely came back. Father-in-law, mother-in-law. Su Xiaoma knelt down and handed them tea. Please have some tea. Fuck. Jun Changshao, who was sitting in front of the main hall, thought to himself, this guy is really thick-skinned. He's calling me that before they're even married. The system said, how can he find a wife if he's not thick-skinned? It had always been puzzled. When it came to thick-skinned, the host had resisted the upper realm's palm print. His quality was guaranteed, so why was he still single? Could it be that he was too thick-skinned, and there was no room for improvement in his EQ? After Su Xiaoma and Xia Shuiyun served tea, the engagement ceremony ended. As a man, he had to invite the congratulatory guests to a good meal. Otherwise, wouldn't the money be wasted? Serve the wine and dishes, Jun Changshao said loudly. The dining hall was in charge of serving the dishes, and the drizzle hall was in charge of serving the wine. The dishes were made by Lu Wancher, and the wine was made by Lan Kong. Of course, they were all ordinary wines, not the drunken dream that could increase the speed of psionic energy. However, a professional brewer, even the ordinary wine brewed by him was the best in the world. Therefore, when everyone started to eat, they were first shocked by the delicious food, and after drinking, they instantly soared to the 9 heavens. Junior brother Yi. Li Fei put 2 big jars of wine on the table and smiled. Today is senior brother Su's engagement day, you can't be a wet blanket. Yi Xingchen frowned. Thinking that he would have to face the drunken dream in the future, he said heroically, fill it up. Okay. Junior brother Yi, you're a real man. Seeing that Yi Xingchen was planning to drink, Li Qingyang hurriedly sent a telepathic message to Lu Wancher. Junior sister, is the livestock pen locked? It's locked. I even asked Elder Zhen to reinforce it with a formation. Then there's no problem. After eating and drinking to their heart's content, everyone bid farewell and left. Before the ceremony, they had an expression of. After leaving, they had an expression of. Looking at the mess in the martial arts field, Jun Changshao shook his head and said, hurry up and clean it up. Boom! Suddenly, there was an explosion. Li Qingyang instantly determined that it came from the livestock pen, so he covered his head and said, Junior brother, you can't have broken the formation and entered, right? Chapter 1084. Lu Wancher was really worried that Yi Xingchen would run to the livestock pen again. Not only did she lock the door in advance, but she also had the foresight to ask Elder Zhen to set up all kinds of formations. There shouldn't be any problems now, right? The little girl underestimated Pei Aniu's determination to separate from the bed when he was drunk. After the banquet ended, he walked over unsteadily. When he realized that he couldn't enter, he directly destroyed the formation. When Li Qingyang heard the news and rushed over, he found that junior brother Yi was covered in dust from the explosion, but he was sleeping comfortably inside. All kinds of livestock were shivering in the corner. Mom! Why is this human here again? Sigh. Li Qingyang carried the drunk Yi Xingchen and shook his head. Can't you drink less? Jun Changshao was quite puzzled when he heard this. Why did this kid like to go to the livestock pen every time he got drunk? It wasn't until he asked Hui that he understood. Pei Aniu was born poor and raised cows and sheep for a living, so he had special feelings for livestock and the livestock pen. The next day, Yi Xingchen sat in the courtyard expressionlessly. Although he had a splitting headache because of yesterday's drinking, it couldn't compare to the pain in his heart. He wanted to raise his head and shout, why is this happening? Patriarch. In the main hall, Yuan Gongzi skillfully turned on the abacus and said, yesterday's gift money was converted to artificial spirit stones. The total is 5.6 million spirit stones. Not bad, not bad. Jun Changshao smiled. He gave the Taishan Shengzong ores worth 10 million spirit stones and received so many spirit stones as a gift money. It was a way to make money. I'm going to make a fortune with 78,000 spirit stones. Yuan Gongzi added, preparing for the engagement and banquet cost 5 million spirit stones. It doesn't matter. Compared to 5 million spirit stones, 5 million spirit stones was not worth mentioning. After the engagement ceremony, Xia Shuiyun followed her parents back to Taishan Shengzong. At the same time, she gained another identity as the fiancée of the third disciple of the Sect of All Times. With the Sect of All Times' current prestige in the Jianghu and Jun Changshao's extremely protective personality, once his identity was revealed, he would definitely be more powerful than a Taishan Shengzong inner sect disciple. Shui Yun. Before she left, Su Xiaoma walked her to the foot of the mountain. He reluctantly held her small hand and said, "The patriarch agreed to let you stay. Why did you refuse? I'm still a disciple of Taishan Shengzong. How can I stay in the sect of all times?" Her parents were present. Being held by this fellow caused Xia Shui's face to turn red. Su Xiaoma wasn't embarrassed at all. "You're my woman. You'll marry me sooner or later. Why don't you join the sect of all times as soon as possible? Moreover," he said seriously, "you can improve your martial arts realm faster here. I have an ice element physique. Taishan Shengzong is the most suitable place for me to cultivate. We'll talk about it after I marry you." Xia Shuiyun blushed and turned to leave. Although the sect of all times had all kinds of martial arts resources, in terms of ice element cultivation, it was completely incomparable to the Taishan Shengzong. After all, they had always focused on ice element cultivation. Didn't Lu Qianqian also decide to temporarily leave the sect and head to the cold Lu Zhou in the northeast to improve her strength? Alright. Su Xiaoma waved goodbye and said, "Shui Yun, I'll visit you in Taishan Shengzong every few days." Although these words were beautiful, after seeing Xia Shuiyun off, he immediately entered the training tower, the space-time secret realm, and the life and death secret realm to cultivate. In terms of cultivation level, he was far behind Li Qingyang, Xiao Zuiji, and the others, but there was a clear gap between them in all kinds of tempering. Therefore, he had to put aside the matter of romance and make up for it as soon as possible. The feud between the sect of all times and the Taishan Shengzong basically came to an end after Su Xiaoma and Xia Shuiyun got engaged. It didn't develop into a big fight. It was perfect that they would fight to the death. Hall Master Li Jun Changshao came to the drizzle hall and said, "Find out where Fang Lingyu went as soon as possible." Lu Qianqian didn't kill this woman, only crippling her hands and cultivation. However, he had to eliminate the root of the problem to prevent the second rise of the villains, which would bring potential danger to himself and the sect. Understood. Li Luoqiu ordered the outside intelligence network to start a thorough search. After Yu Linyun took over as the acting sect leader, Fang Lingyu and Elder Chu quietly left. There was no news of them after that. Patriarch. A few days later, Li Luoqiu reported, "Fang Lingyu seems to have disappeared into thin air. I've searched all 9 major states but couldn't find her. That's a bit troublesome." Jun Changshao frowned and then asked, "Is there any news from the soul race?" "No," Li Luoqiu said. Jun Changshao said, "This race is good at hiding. We have to investigate carefully. If there's anything suspicious, we have to investigate carefully." "Okay. Have Elder Jiang find Fang Lingyu." Elder Jiang left after the engagement ceremony, Yi Zichen said. "He went to find sister again?" "Yes." As his understanding of the primordial spirit deepened, Jiang Ye's spiritual thoughts spread wider. Therefore, he often went out to look for the boundary when the sect was not busy, although he didn't find anything. Although the 9 states is big, the sect's intelligence network has been set up perfectly. Jun Changshao held his chin and said, "If she is still alive and can't be found, maybe she has gone to the 3 overseas states." Li Luoqiu agreed, "I think so too." Jun Changshao said, "When Elder Jiang comes back, I'll take him to the East Sea Fishery State to try his luck. I'm afraid only the Patriarch can think of his disciples and elders like this in the world," Li Luoqiu said with a smile. Jun Changshao said, "They are all my flesh and blood. I have to love them all." In a damp and dark cave, Elder Chu sat cross-legged with a pale face. No matter how he ran his mental cultivation method, it was difficult to communicate with the spirit in his dantian. This woman's cultivation was good at Wu Xing's level, but her meridians were broken by Jun Changshao's kick. Now she was useless. Of course. If there was a powerful treasure of heaven and earth, it was possible to restore her meridians. On the other hand, Fang Lingyu not only had the tendons in her hands broken, but the spiritual core in her dantian had also exploded. she had completely lost the possibility of practicing martial arts. Damn it! Elder Chu said angrily, if I had known that Lu Qianqian would join the sect of all times, I would have killed her after she was expelled. Master! Fong Lingyu opened her eyes and said weakly, it's too late to say anything now. She was no weaker than Elder Chu. After all, she was jealous of Lu Qianqian's physique and cultivation, so she secretly hindered her, but in the end, she was still suppressed by her. Alas! Elder Chu shook his head and said, Disciple, what should we do? Master, Fong Lingyu walked over to support him and said, give me your cultivation, and I'll help you take revenge. Give you my cultivation? Elder Chu's eyes were filled with shock. Smack! At this moment, Fong Lingyu's injured right hand was placed on her forehead. A green light flashed in her weak eyes, as if she was a devil awakened from hell. You! What are you doing? Ah! Screams came from the cave, and majestic and strange attributes whizzed out. After everything dissipated, Fong Lingyu stood on the spot and gently raised her hand. Feeling her meridians and spiritual core gradually recovering, she said with joy, it really works. It really works. Girl! Suddenly, a sinister voice rang in her ears. Do you believe me now? Fong Lingyu calmed down and said, I can now devour everything to increase my cultivation. That's right. The sinister voice said, but the prerequisite is that you have to go to the northern desert state. There is a way to make you stronger there. The northern desert state? Fong Lingyu thought for a moment and hurriedly left. As for Elder Chu, he had already turned into a dried corpse and was lying in the cave. From his vague and ferocious expression, he must have been in great pain before he died. This old woman was very lucky to be able to live after destroying Lu Qianqian's cultivation. In the end, she died in the hands of the disciple she had trained herself, and she even sacrificed the realm and cultivation that she had cultivated for her entire life. It was a little tragic. Swoosh! Swoosh! Not long after Fong Lingyu left, a few members of the Drizzle Hall landed in front of the cave and found the corpse after entering. There were orders from above that any suspicious places must be strictly investigated, so they did not dare to be careless. While passing the news, they also brought the corpse back to the sect of all times. Jun Changshao checked and said with a cold gaze, it's the soul race again. Chapter 1085. At the medical hall. Sun Bukong said after a careful inspection, Patriarch, this is a female corpse. Jun Changshao almost kicked him to earth. Although the corpse was drained dry, it was obvious that it was a female corpse from the general shape. You've been researching for half a day, and all you can give is a guess that can be seen at a glance? I can't deduce her age, but she should have looked like an old person before she died, Sun Bukong said again. Jun Changshao said, what other clues do you have? Sun Bukong held his chin and said, if I'm not wrong, this female corpse was severely injured when she was alive, and the meridians in her body were broken. Jun Changshao said in surprise, you can tell that? There's a big difference between a person's skin being injured and not being injured, for example. Sun Bukong began to give a medical explanation, but did not say much because it involved confidential information. Amazing, amazing. After listening to his analysis, Jun Changshao said, I didn't waste my time learning medicine from Elder Wei. Elder Wei said, I'm good at planting, but my ability in medicine is limited. Bukong relied entirely on the medical records left behind by the medical saint of all faces to become a self-taught genius. Jun Changshao patted Sun Bukong's shoulder and encouraged him, study it well, the position of Deputy Hall Master of the Medical Hall is waiting for you. Yes. Sun Bukong said loudly. Then, he pointed to the abdomen of the corpse, Patriarch, this is the injured area, it should have been caused by an external force. No, from the state of the injury, it should have been caused by someone's foot. Jun Changshao held his chin and said, one kick to break the meridians, this method is a bit vicious, could it be the work of the Soul Clan? The system said, when the host was in Taishan Shenzong, didn't he just cripple someone with one kick? Jun Changshao then remembered that he had done something similar, so his expression changed slightly. This female corpse can't be Elder Chu, right? Age unknown, an old person. Kick marks on the abdomen, meridians broken when she was alive. Other than the fact that he wasn't wearing the Taishan Shengzong Elder's uniform, everything was too much of a coincidence. After the old witch and Fang Lingyu left the faction, they definitely wouldn't wear their school uniform. It's very possible that they would disguise themselves. After making a guess, Jun Changshao looked at the dried corpse and said solemnly, "This might really be Elder Chu." He was still in a state of conjecture until Lu Chanqian walked over and said, "There's a weak trace of ice element remaining in the corpse. He should have been an ice element martial cultivator when he was alive." Jun Changshao was immediately certain, and said, "Elder Chu is definitely the one. She was dead. Where's Fang Lingyu?" According to the information from Taishan Shengzong, the disappearance of the two of them meant that they had left together. Patriarch Sun Bukong pointed at the head of the mummy and said, "There are obvious scratches here. The spiritual energy might have been absorbed from here." She turned her head and almost jumped up. It was because the patriarch had pulled up his hair at some point. He was wearing blue clothes and a pair of big glasses. There was a red bow tied to his collar. When did he change his clothes? Isn't that too fast? Jun Changshao lowered his head and touched his glasses. He said, "Judging from the body movements of the deceased, he didn't struggle at all when he was alive. It means that the deceased wasn't on guard when the culprit committed the crime." "Makes sense," Xiao Ziji said. Sun Bukong roared loudly, "Makes sense my ass. When did you show up? Why are you carrying a magically modified stereo?" "Paw!" Xiao Ziji turned on the stereo, and the background music of Detective Kodak began to play. Jun Changshao lowered his head again, and two rays of light flashed across his glasses. He said, "It's true. The culprit was very close to the deceased, so he wouldn't have thought of suddenly killing himself." Sun Bukong roared, "What kind of bird language was the patriarch talking about? I can't understand it at all." "Patriarch," Lu Chanqian said, "Elder Chu's murderer is Fang Lingyu." "That's right," Jun Changshao said. Sun Bukong almost fell over. The patriarch was in disguise and speaking in bird language, but eldest senior sister could actually answer on the same channel. This was unbelievable. "I see." Xiao Ziji held his chin and said. Sun Bukong was about to go crazy. "Brother, there's no scene for you to appear here. It's too much to force yourself to carry a stereo." Jun Changshao said, "The soul race needs resentment and hatred to occupy a human's body. Dai Lu is like that. Fang Lingyu's tendons were severed by you and her cultivation was crippled. She must have accumulated a lot of resentment. This is the perfect opportunity to take advantage of the situation." So, he pushed his glasses and said, "There's only one truth. Fang Lingyu's body was occupied by the soul race, and then Elder Chu's cultivation was absorbed when he was unguarded." Lu Chanqian said with a cold face, "When she was young, Elder Chu brought her back to the Taishan Shengzong and raised her as his own daughter. However, he ruthlessly killed her. How heartless." Jun Changshao did not care about Fang Lingyu's actions. What he cared about was that, as he had guessed, there was still a third soul lurking in the Starfall continent. Clap! He clapped his hands and shook his head. "I have something to do again." Fang Lingyu's body being occupied by the soul race was not scary. It was even a good thing for Go Sheng because at least he had a clue. "Hall Master Li." Jun Changshao immediately ordered, "Inform the intelligence network of the various states and counties to find Fang Lingyu. Pay special attention to whether there are withered environments and dried corpses in the mountains." "Yes." Li Luoqiu became busy again. The entire intelligence network began to operate at high intensity. In a short time, information from the various states was sent over. Patriarch. Not long after, Li Luoqiu came to report, "A suspicious person has been found in the northern desert state." The northern desert state? Jun Changshao frowned and said, there's a space-time passage connecting the planes there. Does the third soul want to go back? The first soul had been trained by Arya for a long time and always confessed everything. So, Gosheng was quite familiar with this aspect. For example, last time in the northern desert state, when he took Yixingchen and Shengguan Xinyao to reinforce the array left by the array emperor, they happened to meet Dai Lu, who was instigated by the first soul. It had two purposes. First, it wanted to return to its own world to recover its cultivation and control the host completely. Second, it wanted to send a message to its kind and come back to harm the Starfall continent soon. It seems that Jun Changshao held his chin and said, the third soul is in the same situation as the first soul. It wants to return to the soul race as soon as possible. Ha ha ha. He covered his face and laughed like a villain. Since it's here, how can it leave? Whoosh, in the sky above the Sect of all times, Jun Changshao turned into a stream of light and flew toward the northern desert state. Li Luoqiu shook her head and said, the soul race that caused chaos in the ancient times and caused the continent to fall apart has met the patriarch. It's the worst luck of 18 lifetimes. The northern desert state. Fong Lingyu was running fast in the yellow sand. The third soul in her body was brainwashing her along the way. It had no idea that it was exposed as soon as it appeared. Chapter 1086. This is amazing. On the way to the northern desert state, Fong Lingyu could not hide the shock in her heart. Lu Qianqian had cut her tendons and destroyed her dantian and spiritual core. She had completely lost the chance to cultivate. However, after absorbing her master's cultivation, she had slowly recovered and even broke through to Wu Huang. Girl. The third spirit said, if your cultivation had not been destroyed, you would have benefited even more from absorbing Wu Xing's energy in a normal state. Fong Lingyu's eyes were burning. With the various resources of Taixuan Xingzong, she could improve faster than ordinary people. However, absorbing other people's energy to directly improve her cultivation was like a dream. Can I break through to Half-Saint and break through to Wu Xing? With my help, it won't be a problem for you to break through to Martial Emperor. Fong Lingyu's face lit up with joy. Of course. The third spirit added, if you want to improve faster, you must absorb more energy. It's best if you have a higher cultivation level. Its real purpose of residing in Fong Lingyu's body was to take over. If her cultivation level was higher, it would be extremely beneficial to it. The first spirit had also brainwashed Dai Lu in the same way. However, Brother Green Scarf insisted on not harming the innocent and always used plants to improve his cultivation. Fong Lingyu was different. She could kill someone who treated her as her daughter with her own hands. It could be seen that this woman was ruthless and heartless. Therefore, on the way to the northern desert state, she relied on the devouring power to absorb the energy of many martial artists. After obtaining great benefits, she became even more aggressive. Lu Qianqian. With this ability, I'll be able to kill you in no time. The desire for revenge drove Fong Lingyu. She did not care about innocent lives at all. She only wanted to become stronger faster. It was because of this extreme pursuit of strength and her reckless actions that the Drizzle Hull quickly found clues. Jun Changshao learned that he was already on the way to the northern desert state. The third spirit must go to the place where the formation is sealed. I can wait for him. Whoosh! Jun Changshao flew through the sky at an extremely fast speed. Soon, he arrived at the desert and sat in front of the formation strengthened by Shengguan Xinyao. Whoosh whoosh! The wind howled, and sand and dust filled the air. Because he did not summon his spiritual energy to resist it, Gosheng soon became a giant sand sculpture sitting cross-legged on the ground. Shu-shu-shu. Shu-shu-shu. After an unknown period of time, Fong Lingyu, who was wearing a dust-proof veil, walked over and asked, Senior, is this the place? Not bad. Number 3 spirit said excitedly. He had already sensed the array left behind by the array emperor. As long as he could break it, he could return to the mainland and use his special technique to restore himself to his strongest state. Then, he could come back and kill him. What should I do? Fang Lingyu asked. She had already been successfully brainwashed, and her mind was filled with thoughts of obtaining greater opportunities. Of course. Even if this woman knew that her current actions would endanger the entire continent, she definitely wouldn't care, because the safety of the world had nothing to do with her. She only wanted to become stronger, and she only wanted to firmly trample Lu Qianqian under her feet. Get closer. The third spirit said, I'll break the formation. All right. Fang Lingyu walked over. Seeing that there was an idiot who looked like a human beside him, he thought that it was a stone and didn't take it to heart. Girl. The third spirit said, let me control the body and help you break the formation to obtain the greatest opportunity in the world. The greatest opportunity in the world? Fang Lingyu's eyes were burning, but she immediately relaxed. Although this woman was ruthless, her intelligence wasn't as high as Dai Lu's. At least the latter could tell that it wouldn't be good for her body to be controlled by a spirit. Whoosh whoosh. Green attributes poured out and filled the sky of yellow sand. Fang Lingyu's mind was controlled, her eyes gradually turned green, like a zombie. Kakik. The third spirit laughed strangely, this human girl is too easy to trick, controlling the body without any effort. As long as I break the formation and return to the soul race continent, this Hall Master will return and this world is destined to turn into nothingness. Old friend. Please turn your face around. The third spirit who was laughing strangely was stunned, then instinctively turned his head. Slap! Jun Changshao held the flat sucker and skillfully smacked it in the face, saying, return to the soul race continent? You're beautiful, you wish. Before the third spirit could figure out what was going on, the enhanced mode of the magically modified vacuum cleaner was activated, and his soul was immediately separated from Fang Lingyu and quickly absorbed into the cleaner. Swish! Jun Changshao shook his head and said, another one down. So far, the most tragic soul race in history was killed in less than 3 minutes. If the first and second spirits knew, they would definitely despise him. After all, one of them had been strong for a long time, and the other had made great achievements in the East Ocean fishery state. They were both soul race. Why was he so embarrassing? Plop! Fang Lingyu collapsed on the ground, and her dull eyes gradually regained their luster. She instantly felt a sharp pain on her scalp, so she instinctively touched it and was shocked to find that she was bald. What's going on? What's going on? Suddenly, Fang Lingyu found that Jun Changshao was standing next to her, taking out all kinds of weapons one after another. How can you do something like killing your master? Were you a devil in your previous life? In the end, Gosheng chose the Green Dragon Crescent Blade because Guan Yu was a righteous man. It was the most suitable weapon to kill such a heartless person. What do you want? Fang Lingyu's eyes were filled with horror, and a strong sense of death surged in her heart. Swish! Jun Changshao raised his blade, stirring up dust and sand, and the heavy blade was placed on the woman's delicate neck. Qianqian didn't kill you. I'll do it myself. Jun Changshao said indifferently, like an emotionless killer. Jun Patriarch. Don't kill me. Fang Lingyu said in fear, shouting in her heart for the senior who made her stronger, but there was no answer. The despair in her eyes was even stronger. I'm still young. I can't die like this. A strong desire to survive burst out in Fang Lingyu's heart, making her kneel on the ground with the Green Dragon Crescent Blade and beg, Jun Patriarch. As long as you spare my life, I'm willing to be a cow, a horse, a slave, and listen to your orders for the rest of my life. Puff the blade flashed, stirring up dust. Hot blood splashed, dyeing the yellow sand red. Plop! Plop! Fang Lingyu's head and body fell to the ground, begging for mercy in her eyes. This kind of villain, who usually survived a disaster and would definitely bring great trouble to the protagonist in the future, did not live past the 3rd chapter, just like the 3rd soul. Jun Changshao maintained his posture and said indifferently, do I lack people who can be a cow, a horse, a slave? The host doesn't lack anything, the system complained. You just lack EQ, whoosh whoosh. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The scorching flames burned, and Fang Lingyu's body turned into ashes. This time, she was really dead. There was no need to worry about her reincarnation and coming out to harm others again. Swish! Jun Changshao withdrew the green dragon crescent blade. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly stopped and turned to look at the array behind him. He saw blurry energy ripples rippling out. Could it be? Jun Changshao frowned and said, the soul race is trying to break the seal on the other side? That's great! In front of the space-time passage connecting the soul race continent to the falling star continent, a soul race expert said happily, the fifth hallmaster has awakened. We can work together to break the array. Huh. Finally, I don't have to carry my head to see the Empress. The soul race experts were overjoyed. However, they probably did not expect that although the fifth hallmaster had awakened, there was no hope of working together because she had been defeated by Jun Changshao. The most tragic thing was that under the pressure of Queen Rose, they had thought of a good way to break the array, but it had been officially discovered by Go Sheng. At this moment, he was holding his chin and muttering to himself, there are energy fluctuations in the array. Xinyao didn't notice that someone is breaking the array. Chapter 1087. Hum. Hum. Ripples spread across the yellow sand. Because the commotion wasn't too big, and because of the harsh environment, it was difficult to notice if one wasn't here. Something's wrong. Jun Changshao held his chin and pondered. The array formation had been reinforced by Shengguan Xinyao, so there shouldn't be any problems. Why would there be regular energy fluctuations? There was only one possibility. The soul continent was restless again and was cracking it internally. Jun Changshao hurriedly contacted the sect with his voice transmission and asked if there were any signs from Shengguan Xinyao. The answer he received was no. This was even stranger. Swish! With a thought, he merged into the Heaven Origin Soul Suppressing Tower. Smack! 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 Area was rhythmically whipping Soul number 2 with the Soul Suppressing Whip. Judging from the other party's enjoyment, it should be very painful. Soul number 1 was more comfortable. Ever since Soul number 2 came, the time it was tortured had decreased significantly. It was really, thanks to the blessing of the same race. Master. Area stopped and smiled innocently. Are you here to deliver prisoners again? As the artifact spirit of the Heaven Origin Soul Suppressing Tower, its duty was to discipline unclean things. Ever since it signed a contract with Jun Changshao, it had not been idle. It played with whips, candles, and ropes every day. Its life was very fulfilling. Not bad. Jun Changshao took out the modified vacuum cleaner and released Soul number 3. The latter turned into a wisp of green light and slammed into the barrier. Swoosh! Area raised the soul-suppressing whip and said, don't even think about running away. Smack! Ah! Soul number 3 screamed in pain, then turned into a human and fell to the ground. Soul number 1 and soul number 2 were completely dumbfounded. Wasn't this old fifth? Why was he captured too? Soul number 3, who was lying on the ground and grimacing, saw the two of them and said in disbelief, third brother. Fourth brother. Why are you here? Third brother, fourth brother. Jun Changshao said with interest, could it be that the 9 souls who came to harm the falling star continent back then were a family? The system said, I don't know if they're a family, but I do know that they're the Calabash brothers now. Every time they appear, they're taken down by the host. How pitiful. That reminds me of something. Jun Changshao said seriously, 3 souls appeared one after another. If the remaining 6 exist, will they appear together with 4th baby and 5th baby? The system said, with the magically modified vacuum cleaner in hand, even if 6 of them jumped out of the gourd, it wouldn't be enough for the host to suck. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, I was lucky enough to find 3. I'm just afraid that some of the soul race are hiding very deeply, only coming out to wreak havoc when they have the power to destroy the world. That's true. The system was very pleased. Many of the host's actions seemed to be a little brainless and rash. However, when it came to important matters, he was not careless at all. Instead, he was very cautious. Jun Changshao sat down, looked at the 3 Soul Race clansmen, and said, I have some things to ask you. Whoever can answer will be spared from being whipped for a day. The 3rd soul roared angrily, I don't know anything. I won't say anything. I'll talk. I'll talk. The 1st and 2nd souls said in unison. You. The 3rd soul said angrily, do you still have the dignity of a soul race? The 1st and 2nd souls ignored it. This fellow had not carefully tasted the life of crazy abuse. After experiencing it for real, it would definitely learn how to answer first like him. Jun Changshao looked at the 1st soul and said, why do you want to return to the soul race's continent? Because although I didn't die at the hands of the martial emperor 10,000 years ago, my soul was severely injured. I have to return to the soul accumulation pool in the soul race's continent to recuperate before I can truly reach my best state. Arya smiled in satisfaction. The 1st soul's answer was so straightforward. As expected, he did not let down his training during this period. In other words, the others of the same kind have also been severely injured and have to go to that pool to recuperate? Jun Changshao asked. No. The 2nd soul answered first, I don't need to recuperate. Because he found a very suitable body. As long as he breaks through to a higher level and occupies it, he will be able to recover his damaged soul. Although that was the case, Great Emperor Zhenwei was not a weak character. After becoming stronger, he used the peerlessly fire art to suppress it, so it was unable to succeed. Although he got what he wanted, he came in a few minutes after he appeared. Jun Changshao looked at the 3rd soul and said, if I'm not wrong, your soul was also injured. However, Fong Lingyu's cultivation is too low to recover, so you can only hope to enter the soul race's continent to recover. Humph. The 3rd soul snorted coldly. I have more backbone than those 2. You want to get any information from me? No way. Does the soul race's continent know that you've awakened? They know. The 1st and 2nd souls answered in unison. What kind of unimaginable training did they go through to be able to answer every question without hesitation? Jun Changshao leaned forward and said, tell me the overall strength of the soul race's continent. For example, who is the boss and how strong is his cultivation? The 2 souls wanted to speak, but the 3rd soul finally couldn't help roaring, if the Empress finds out about your betrayal of the soul race, you will definitely suffer a punishment worse than death. Arya. Yes. Train them well. Yes. Arya walked over with an innocent face. She opened the whip in her hand and smiled devilishly. Come on. Whoever gives in is a coward. Paw paw paw. Z z z. Swish swish swish. Ah 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 ah. Arya began to train them. The whipping sound, the splashing sound of candles, and the waving sound of ropes intertwined into a beautiful melody in the tower. The 1st and 2nd souls' legs went soft and their scalps exploded. You too. Jun Changshao walked over and put his hands on their shoulders. He pulled them over and smiled, who is the Empress? Empress Ling Ping. The boss of the soul race's continent. The 3rd soul was crazily trained, and the 2 souls answered faster. TSK TSK. It turned out that the ruler of the soul race's continent was a woman. Jun Changshao asked, how strong is your Empress? The 2nd soul said quickly, our Empress's strength, according to the realm of the falling star continent, is almost at the level of a half-saint. So weak? Jun Changshao was surprised. The soul race could tear the falling star continent apart in ancient times, but the Empress was only at this level of cultivation. Wouldn't he be easily defeated if he went there? The soul race was not Scion, and they were not a powerful fighting race. Their special feature was that they used soul bodies to occupy the bodies of other races, and when they fattened up, they would take them for themselves. The first soul said, "The Empress's strength is not high, but she has absolute authority. We have to obey unconditionally and can't disobey. Besides," it quickly added, "now that 10,000 years have passed, the Empress may have broken through to Wu Sheng, or even Martial Emperor." Nonsense. Number 2 rolled his eyes at him and said, "With our Empress' aptitude and her constant stay in the Soul Tribe's continent, unless she consumes immortal pills and spirit medicines, it will be absolutely impossible for her to break through to the Martial Emperor level." "Not bad, not bad." The first soul corrected him, "I'm the one who said too much." Jun Changshao leaned back in his chair and thought to himself, "If this Empress is not a Martial Emperor and can control the Soul Tribe's mainland, wouldn't I be able to control the entire Soul Tribe's mainland if I capture her? How does your Empress look like?" "She's an outstanding beauty." Jun Changshao placed his hands on his forehead and smoothed his hair back. He thought to himself, "I finally know why I'm so handsome." The system had a bad omen. Jun Changshao didn't have a supporting actor to support him, so he said, "Because he was born to hook up with all kinds of outstanding beauties and heavenly fragrances. He was used to startle the heavenly empresses." Bah! 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 He toy. Chapter 1088. After handing over the third soul to Arya, Jun Changshao returned to the outside world. He had a better understanding of the continent of the Soul Clan. If he wanted to solve it safely, the best way was to take down the queen. How to take her down? Jun Changshao quickly thought of two plans. The first was to subdue the queen of the Soul Clan with force, and the second was to rely on his beauty. The Soul Clan hadn't returned for 10,000 years. God knew how strong Queen Ling Ping was now, so there were uncertainties in the first plan. In this case, he could only execute the foolproof second plan, which was to use his beauty to conquer her. The system remained silent. It had spat and vomited in the Tianyuan soul-suppressing pagoda, and its mouth was dry. Jun Changshao was thinking about it, but he didn't know that 10,000 years had passed. The leader of the Soul Clan was no longer Queen Ling Ping, but Queen Rose. The continent of the Soul Clan, a desolate place. Boom! 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 Violent energy roared out, and huge fist marks appeared on the ground. The surrounding space was even shattered. If Jun Changshao was present, he would definitely be shocked. Because from the momentum contained in the air, the attacker's cultivation must be stronger than Taixuan Xingzong Lan Jingting. Swish! On the mountain peak, Queen Rose, who carried rose petals all over the sky, floated down. A charming smile appeared on her mature face. The Soul Clan experts watching the battle widened their eyes. After the queen took power, she spent all her time attacking other planes. Unexpectedly, not only did she not fall behind in martial arts, but she had reached the Return to Origin realm. The two highest realms in the continent of the Soul Clan were the Return to Origin realm and the Return to Origin realm. In terms of the realm of the Falling Star continent, the Return to Origin realm was stronger than Wusheng, but weaker than Martial Emperor. If one broke through to the Return to Origin realm, he could break the void and ascend to the upper world. Every plane had different realms and names. To get a more accurate comparison, the two sides had to fight to know. Our queen is mighty. Our queen is mighty. Everyone immediately shouted loudly, and their eyes were filled with strong admiration. In the history of the Soul Clan, there were a total of 4 empresses. The first 3 empresses were relatively ordinary, but Queen Rose was so talented that her cultivation was even above the peak of the continent. Of course. The reason why his cultivation base had improved so quickly was because he had been leading the troops to conquer other planes ever since he took office. It could be said that every bit of growth was tempered from actual combat. He had both strength and absolute authority. The Rose Queen was definitely an existence of supreme faith in the Spiritus continent. The seal leading to the Falling Star continent hasn't been broken yet. Your Majesty, we are working hard. A bunch of trash. Rose Queen's brows furrowed in anger. She was extremely disappointed with the efficiency of her subordinates. 10,000 years ago, the previous Hall Master had sent the 9 Hall Masters to attack the falling star continent. Since then, he had never returned. The mess that he had left behind had to be dealt with. Grand Elder Taishian Shengzong has just reached the great fulfillment of Wusheng. I've fought with him for hundreds of moves, but I still can't gain the upper hand. I have to get stronger as soon as possible. Jun Changshao muttered to himself as he stood in front of the formation. With all kinds of equipment and weapons, he could defeat the sky battlefield specters. However, they were still low-level creatures without self-awareness. Even if Lan Jingting had just entered the great fulfillment level, they still had little chance of winning. However, Jun Changshao said to himself, the Spiritus Empress is very weak. If I can't seduce her with beauty, it's easy to conquer her with strength. So, he rubbed his temples and said, what I need to consider now is how to enter the Spiritus continent. Judging from the frequent energy waves from the formation, the Spiritas were trying to find a way to break it. Instead of waiting for death, it was better to charge in first. As long as he could deal with the Spiritas Empress, the problem would be perfectly solved. The system suggested, since there is a portal to the battlefield, there might be a portal to the plane. Jun Changshao rolled his eyes. This guy's goal was to make him spend money. The portal to the plane battlefield was a reward for completing a mission. Who knew how many contribution points it would cost to deliberately refresh the store? The system said, the opportunity is right in front of the host. It's up to you whether you want to use it or not. Of course. You may spend a lot of contribution points, but if it refreshes, even if you spend all of them, you'll still profit. What do you mean? If there is a portal to the plane, the host can teleport to other planes at will. Wouldn't the martial arts resources that the Starfall continent doesn't have be at your fingertips? The system was not a professional system because it was often slapped in the face. But it was definitely a very qualified salesman. With just one sentence, it made Go Sheng's heart palpitate. At present, with the resources of the Starfall continent, it would be difficult to support all the disciples to break through Wu Huang or even higher. If they went to other planes to find resources, it would be very easy. That's right. The system said, those who want to do great things have to have a long-term vision. Okay. Jun Changshao opened the middle-level store and said, let's try it. The system was speechless. After talking for so long, he actually didn't want to farm high-level ones. Jun Changshao still maintained his rationality and said, sometimes, the middle-level store can also produce good things. Maybe there will be unexpected gains. Indeed. Some of the goods in the middle-level store were very practical. For example, the field artillery that could still be used now, as well as the magically modified vacuum cleaner that had a miraculous effect against the soul race. The system said, farming high-level stores is the way to go. The middle-level stores are completely based on luck. Host, it's better not to waste your contribution points. I don't believe it. Lord Changshao got into a fight and refreshed the page. Damn! The system was shocked. Host, you actually got EQ liquid again. This time, not only was there EQ liquid, but there was also a high-leveled martial arts book. Jun Changshao bought it without hesitation. After confirming that the other goods were not useful, he decisively refreshed it again. The system, he missed the second chance perfectly. He was destined to be alone for the rest of his life. Jun Changshao continued to refresh. Anyway, now that he had tens of thousands of contribution points, it would not hurt him to refresh dozens of times. Ding! Contribution points, 58900700000. Ding! Contribution points, 57800700000. Ding! As he refreshed it again and again, a large number of contribution points gradually disappeared. During this period, there were also many high-leveled martial arts, weapons, and equipment recipes. Compared to the 7 Mystic Sunglow and Dragon Tooth series, they were a little weak. The Sect did not have many martial arts skills to begin with. It could be matched completely, giving the disciples more choices in cultivation. The weapons and equipment were currently stored in the Sect of all timeses or reserves. It was impossible for all of them to be of the Dragon Tooth series, so it was not bad to match them. The system was speechless. So this guy is not farming for methods to enter other planes, but to provide more martial arts resources for the Sect. Nonsense. Jun Changshao said, it's not like I have so many contribution points that I have nowhere to spend them. Ding! Contribution points, 38900700000. After refreshing it again, he spent a total of 20,000 contribution points in a short time. He obtained more than 10 martial arts books and more than 20 weapon and equipment recipes, including swords, spears, staffs, axes, hooks, and forks. If it was in the past, Go Sheng would definitely break down because he did not get the plane teleportation door he wanted. Fortunately, this refresh was mainly to strengthen the Sect, so not only did he not feel the pinch, he even thought that he had earned a little. As expected. Mentality was the most important thing in doing anything. Wait. Jun Changshao's eyes lit up as he looked at the new goods, because a product called Spacetime Larva appeared in his field of vision. Spacetime Larva. Spacetime Larva. Go Sheng quickly clicked on the introduction item, Spacetime Larva. Introduction, lives in the depths of the universe, a type of insect that can break through space barriers. Advantage, it starts to nibble away at space barriers until it reaches the end. It will form a spacetime tunnel that is not restricted by heaven and earth, allowing any creature to enter and exit at will. Disadvantage, larva does not have the ability to break through barriers. Needs to be fed until it reaches adulthood. Price, 2,000 contribution points. Ha ha ha. Jun Changshao laughed with his hands on his hips. Isn't it here, isn't it here? The system was speechless. He had sworn that the EQ elixir would not be refreshed, but he was slapped in the face by the first refresh. He thought that it was a waste of contribution points to farm mid-level stores, but he did not expect to get one with 20,000 contribution points. Fortunately, it did not have a physical body, or his face would be even thicker than Go Sheng's. Chapter 1089. Jun Changshao spent 2,000 contribution points to buy the spacetime larva. It was a little guy that looked like an earthworm, sleeping soundly inside a transparent container. I believe you can drill the ground. Drilling through the space barrier is a bit ridiculous. Go Sheng was a bit doubtful, but since the product description said it was okay, there shouldn't be any problems. Then, here's the problem. What should I use to feed it? Although it was cheap to buy this little guy, it can only open a space-time tunnel when it grows up. The system spoke. This kind of creature that can dig holes in deep space will probably take 10,000 years to reach adulthood. Jun Changshao roared, can't you hope for something better? I'm just telling the truth, the system helplessly said. If the host doesn't want to hear it, then let's make it a month. Jun Changshao shook his head. How can this little guy grow up? I can. Suddenly, the spacetime larva in the container raised its head and spoke from its abdomen. As long as there's enough spirit energy to feed me, let alone a month, I can grow up in a day. Damn! Jun Changshao was shocked and said, you can speak human language? Of course, the spacetime larva raised its head and proudly said, I'm an insect with a noble bloodline, I can speak from birth. Jun Changshao was speechless. This kind of insect that was no different from an earthworm actually has a noble bloodline. Where would the nobler dragon put its face? Spirit energy? Jun Changshao asked, can you be more specific? For example, the energy ores that you humans often use to cultivate can be used to feed me, the spacetime larva said. Is that so? Jun Changshao hurriedly took out a man-made spirit stone and said, I just happen to have one here, give it a try, show. The spacetime larva crawled out of the container. It used its almost imperceptible nose to touch the spirit stone and said with disdain, this spirit stone is too low level. Jun Changshao took out another natural spirit stone. The spacetime larva touched it again and shook its head, it's still too low level. Jun Changshao was speechless. Although the little fellow was small in size, his requirements for spirit stones were quite high. Here. Jun Changshao brought out his trump card and took out the hexagram stone. I don't believe that an existence like this, which is equivalent to 10 natural spirit stones, can't satisfy it. Yes, yes. The spacetime larva sniffed and said with satisfaction, this energy stone is barely passable. Barely passable? Jun Changshao suddenly felt a little dizzy. Shwa! The spacetime larva climbed onto the 6-pointed star stone. Its body flickered with a faint light as it fused with the energy inside and began to draw it out. Just as it was about to happily absorb the energy, Jun Changshao pinched it with 2 fingers and said, insects are also classified as beasts. If you want to absorb energy, you have to sign a contract with me. If I were to absorb it just because you said so, where would I, Go Sheng, put my face? Let me go. The spacetime larva began to struggle. However, with its small body, it could not escape the shackles of being trapped in a heavenly prison. Sign a contract with me, and not only will I let you go, but I'll also let you absorb all kinds of energy ores. Jun Changshao smiled. In his opinion, only by becoming the master of this insect and achieving perfect control would it have any value in feeding it. Otherwise, if he raised it and it ran away with its butt, he would really become a big idiot. No! The spacetime larva said, my master must be a hero of the world. Jun Changshao joked, one day, I'll have to step on a rainbow cloud to sign a contract with you. That's not impossible, smack. Before the little fellow could finish, it was pressed against the equipment. Huff, huff. Jun Changshao brought out all kinds of flames and said fiercely, I don't have rainbow clouds, but I have rainbow flames. If you don't submit to me, I'll roast you immediately. The spacetime larva did not expect that an insect with a noble bloodline like itself would be threatened by a human, so it roared loudly, I submit. The system, to say the most cowardly words in the most unyielding tone, this little fellow was also a weirdo. Huff, huff. Jun Changshao retracted the flames and released his spiritual sense, gradually enveloping the spacetime larva and said, relax your mind, don't resist. The little fellow could only tearfully compromise until its soul established some kind of connection with the other party, and it could not help but let out an ah. Swoosh! Jun Changshao retracted his finger and smiled, from today onwards, you're my contract beast. Master will definitely raise you until you're white and fat. The spacetime larva collapsed weakly in the equipment, its small eyes filled with tears. Swoosh! 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 At this moment, hexagonal stones were placed next to it. Jun Changshao clasped his hands and said, absorb. As if the spacetime larva had been greatly wronged, it smelled the scent of psionic energy and immediately rushed over with a smile. Huff, huff. After about a moment, a hexagonal stone was completely absorbed and turned into a useless dull stone. Jun Changshao said in surprise, so fast. With his current cultivation and absorption speed, it would take at least 10 minutes to absorb a hexagonal stone, but the little fellow only took 1 minute. Huff, huff. Huff, huff. A few minutes later, the other 5 hexagonal stones were completely absorbed. Jun Changshao's eyelids twitched wildly. He expressed his understanding of using spirit stones to grow. However, after absorbing 6, its physique did not seem to have changed at all. The host thought that spending more than 20,000 contribution points to buy a spacetime larva made a killing. Now it seems that it's as bottomless as hatching a beast egg, the system said sarcastically. Master! The spacetime larva said, are there any more? I want to eat. Jun Changshao wiped the sweat on his forehead and said, how many do you need to eat until you reach adulthood? This, the spacetime larva estimated and said, about tens of millions. When Jun Changshao heard this, he almost fell to the ground. Tens of millions of hexagonal stones to grow to adulthood, wouldn't that be hundreds of millions of natural spirit stones? Even hatching that little rooster that had the vermilion bird bloodline and was responsible for crowing in the sect did not burn so much money. Clang! Jun Changshao took out the green dragon crescent blade and pressed the blade against the tool, saying, "Such a costly thing, let's just kill it directly." The system suggested, "It has a noble bloodline, it'll definitely be delicious if we roast it." "Master!" The space-time larva panicked. "You! What do you want?" Jun Changshao said bitterly, "You can eat too much, I can't afford to raise you, so I can only bear the pain and kill you." Don't. The space-time larva said with a look of horror, I'm very easy to raise. Without spirit stones, I can eat crystal cores and herbs. Even if I eat soil, I can still grow." "Eat soil?" Jun Changshao said, "What do you mean?" The space-time larva hurriedly said, "If there's soil that contains spirit energy, I can also grow until I eat to a certain extent and comprehend the ability to nibble space, then I can bring Master to travel between planes." "What soil?" "As long as it has some spirit energy." Jun Changshao put away the green dragon crescent blade and held his chin, saying, "After Peppa evolves, the soil it eats will spit out spirit energy. It should be able to raise it, right?" Achoo! In the herb field, Peppa, who was resting, could not help but sneeze. You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.